Anna, high-speed round.
And Hainan milestone. Southern China's Hainan province is 1 month away from a major economic milestone, the launch of its island-wide special customs system. We check in on the preparation. Arrived in Beijing to ease tensions. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has urged Japan to
sign in tooth-fire and
a deteriorating public security environment. Our reporter Yo Yang has more.
Recently in Japan,
research institutes slumped, with actually transportation operators will also hit. Yo Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
Japan's GDP shrank 1.8% from July to September, marking the first contraction in 6 quarters. Exports drag on the economy as the impact of higher US tariffs intensified. Japan's exports of goods and services shrank 1.2%. That's compared to the second quarter when they rose by 2.3%. That could signal the Federal Reserve's next move on interest rates. Spot gold down 0.1% at $4,076.40 per ounce as of 11 GMT, after falling 0.4% earlier in the day. However, the short-term dip contrasts with a powerful long-term trend. Spot gold has surged approximately 60% this year, repeatedly hitting.
I think the price for gold market is in turbulence in recent trade days. This is very logical within the expectation of the market. As we know, the major central banks of the world are now becoming more cautious. The value more actions to have interest cut that could have more negative impact in the U.S. Treasury because of this some uncertainties imposed by the American, so that the action influence that were made by the People's Bank of China. So the policy and also tariffs and the geopolitical tension. But we hope that U.S. Treasury
1% is often referred to as an island-wide closure operation. The initiative is a crucial step in a broader strategy to establish Hainan as a premier,
enabling the free flow of goods between the island and countries outside the Chinese mainland, enhancing business and tourism opportunities. Inception in 2018, the Hainan Free Trade Port has made remarkable strides in trade and investment facilitation, cross-border capital flows, personnel mobility, and transportation connectivity
in Hainan, especially those in green energy, cutting-edge technology and modern services. Moving on to some other business headlines from around the world now. Samsung Electronics and 3 other major Republic of Korea companies have announced new domestic investment plans totaling $550 billion US. The announcement was made in a meeting with President Lee Jae-myung, who hopes the move will ease concerns that companies are prioritising investments in the United States following a recent trade deal. Meanwhile, Bitcoin has erased all its gains for the year, briefly falling below 94,000 early Monday. The sell-off is driven by shifting Federal Reserve rate cut expectations amid persistent inflation, coupled with continuous outflows from institutional investment funds. And in the United States, a crucial backlog of economic data is set for release after the federal government ended its longest ever shutdown. The long-delayed reports include September's employment figures, October inflation.
Very quickly.
The White House has unveiled new trade deals with Argentina of the world, a trade deal with South Korea. Seoul will invest $150 billion.
Tupou blind box is driving strong sales, giving American retailers.
Retail experts say hard-to-get Labubu models are still fetching high prices in second-hand markets, and Pop Mart stores are still doing brisk business.
So it's gone really viral on TikTok. People post unboxing videos. It's, probably the most sought-after toy, if you want to call it a toy. For the Christmas season this year.
San Francisco was slow to recover from the COVID pandemic. Stores and restaurants were left empty as many workers stayed home and worked remotely. That's why it was welcome news in October when Walmart held a grand opening for its second San Francisco store in the famed Union Square area. It's taken up residence in a space that had been vacant since 2019. At the new two-story location, business was nonstop in the middle of the day on a weekday.
We have 10, and I used to buy them only on, but I happened to walk past Little Pop Mart, and we said, let's try our luck, and we were successful.
Pretty nice. I already got a full set of this one, but I just wanted to get one more.
I think it's definitely helping, drive traffic to downtown, which we need on Powell Street. So many shops have closed. So
If you don't know what you get until you open it, does exceedingly well at getting you to come back for more. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
And that wraps up this edition of Global Business. You can follow us on social media platforms, including Facebook and YouTube. And the show is also...
Infringing on the core of China's core interests, Japan Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi has sent China-Japan relations into a tailspin just 3 weeks after taking office. On November the 7th, during a parliamentary debate, she said that the Chinese meant to drills at sea. And the situation shows no sign of easing, as Takaichi has. Why is China so angry this time? Has China overreacted and a protest? China has advised its citizens to refrain from visiting Japan for the time being, and for students to carefully reconsider studying in Japan, citing security concerns. A China Coast Guard fleet patrolled the territorial waters of the Diaoyu Islands in the Eastern Sea. Fire exercises are being conducted in the Yellow Sea this week. So let's look at exactly what was said by the Japanese Prime Minister on November the 7th. And I'm going to, Abe said for the first time that a Taiwan emergency is a Japanese emergency, and therefore an...
she's only come to office through internal party machination, and really needs to consolidate a position, particularly after what has been actually, frankly, an embarrassing episode of grovelling to the United States that she's engaged in recent times. So, I think that there's a lot going on here, but basically, she pushed the militaristic and has overstepped the mark.
Well, in answering questions about whether or not, she made these comments, backs the stance of the PRC. So basically, what she's saying is...
she likes the idea of spending a lot of money, but instead of having structural reforms, as he put, and was not able to do, she's just simply saying that the state needs to take more control. Ironically, Japan has traditionally complained that China is more centrally governed, and she wants to do exactly the same thing. So people should look at this as just simply a way that she is trying to divert attention from the fact that she is not be able to do anything with current economic policies in terms of moving Japan forward. Spending more money in a country that has the largest debt per capita and as a percentage of their GDP, over 250%. The U.S. really brings into question how long can this spending spree go on.
Professor Liu Xiang, a lot of people are looking at...
Takaichi became the Prime Minister. Our President Xi Jinping had seemingly it was a good meeting, but immediately after the meeting, Takaichi with...
she insisted that she's not going to retract it, and then China, rolled out more measures, uptick the tone of protests. And
there's been a lot of bloviating about the Chinese reaction, but if it was anyone else, you'd probably have, frankly, the Japanese, I doubt, would have wanted to happen in the first place. Had they let sleeping dogs lie, then perhaps things might have calmed down a little bit.
Of APEC During that meeting, she said Japan is going to respect the 1972 joint statement when it comes to Taiwan, but she turns around and meet a high-level advisor to the leader, the regional leader in Taiwan, and on a social media tweet, she posted the picture that set China off and, deteriorate the relationship.
Here, where, Donald Trump will come in, for instance, with Modi, he wished Modi a happy birthday, and then he asked Europe to put 100% tariffs on India. The Indians don't understand that, but this is the new. She believes that Japan's only sin was to lose the war. She doesn't acknowledge that this was a fascist war. And unfortunately, 80 years after we thought that this kind of fascism was dead, you see parts of it resurrect itself in the kind of rhetoric that you see coming from Japan. And as I said, please do not see this as policy. This is simply her trying to popularize her positions. You can look.
For whatever reason, she's not doing that and, not accepting that she made a mis remarks.
If we look back at her behaviors and the remarks in the past, compares intention to create a crisis. And we have to be very alert, keep alert in the current situation. And we have to watch closely what direction Japan was led to.
What I do not understand is, she, before being elected prime minister, she was a government minister.
We looking at her visit to the shrine, we can be more clear that her intention is to be a success.
Have on people in the region.
These are clearly held beliefs, right? I mean, you've just got to understand the political character that we're dealing with here. These aren't sort of conscious choices weighing up the pros and cons of, particular utterances and how others may or may not react. What she is doing is actually articulating perspectives that she's held for a very, very long time, and perspectives that are fundamentally neo-fascist in nature. She's trying to reconstruct a militarized Japan in the 21st century, drawing on the militaristic history of Japan that was defeated in the Second World War. Defeated, I might add, by and large through the efforts of people across Southeast Asia. I don't think the people of China or the people only to then go against it through actions in the other. Right? So Japan itself needs to come to terms with the role that it played in the first half of the March. Right? The region has actually managed, despite some historical challenges, to have many years of relative stability and calm, enabling the economic development across the entirety of the place. And now you've got Japan clearly under economic pressure domestically, clearly under geopolitical pressure, and clearly driven by a deep sense of neo-fascist ideology internally, is now causing ructions across Asia, which will have ramifications not only for Japan, but ultimately also for the well-being and security of Asia at large. It is totally irresponsible.
Well, we'll wait and see how the Japanese government own up to the words and the irresponsible remarks, and how they're going to, own up to it. But China will.
From London, This is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: one of the world's biggest political, economic and security meetings underway in Moscow, with China's Premier Li Qiang a 10th meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Li Qiang is attending at the request of Russia's Prime Minister. Moscow says the event is a chance to secure further trade, energy...
Something that is of paramount importance for all of the member states of the SCO. Now, we know that Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin has been receiving the heads of governments of the SCO states, and he was holding some bilateral meetings, including with the Iranian vice president, and political political course that is determined by other countries is not something that should be present on the international stage. Instead, offering multilateral format of the cooperation, the countries can choose for themselves what and with whom they want to be trading and ensuring economic ties. So this meeting in Moscow is expected to cement that. A number of agreements is expected to be signed as part of that. There will be some documents sent saying that underfinancing is one of the reasons why that has become as such. And Moscow is now saying that sustainable development goals should be achieved until 2035. Should be new goals, and attention has to be paid to that. So all in all, many leaders, many decision makers are in the Russian capital to attend those SCO-linked events.
Dasha, thank you for that. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Germany's finance minister has arrived in Beijing to press for more stable trading relations with China. Lars Klingbeil became the first member of Germany's new coalition government to make the visit. China's Vice Premier He Lifeng says he hopes Germany will use its influence to help strengthen
6 billion euros, making China Germany's top trading partner for the 8th year in a row. With economies in this scale, transparency and predictability become essential for long-term investment decisions. From my own experience working with clients, in both sides operate with greater confidence. Overall, it is, in my opinion,
Wang He has welcomed Syria's envoy Assad al-Shabani to Beijing. This is the first official visit by a Syrian envoy since Ahmed al-Shara became...
Which focused on building a partnership of friendship and cooperation for peace and development. Another joint statement signed in 2008 on advancing strategic and beneficial relations. And also, regardless of which political party or individual holds power in office, Mao said that the Japanese government's commitment on Taiwan question should be upheld and honored. Also, the spokeswoman said that China urged Japanese side to act responsible toward history and the diplomatic relations, stop crossing the line and playing with fire. And
in the Java region of Indonesia, housing and...
spent long hours out in the open.
Winter season brings severe challenges for families who lost their homes.
Of 1.4 billion people, the world's second largest economy, home to stories of the unexpected, the unimaginable.
One of the world's biggest political, economic and security meetings is underway in Moscow, with China's Premier Li Qiang attending. Our other headlines: Germany's finance minister is in Beijing to strengthen ties with China. What do we expect this and handle together?
So to be decided. I think we're waiting for that. But those who are granted asylum would only receive it on a temporary basis, and it would be subject to review every 2.5 years. Currently, it's every 5 years, so that's a reduction of half. Plus, if their home country becomes safe, they could then be ordered to return home at some point in the future. And meanwhile, they'll have to wait 20 years before they can apply to...
Yes, OK, I know it's tough when a lot of people come in, but we have so much. And some of these people are coming from places where they have nothing. And I think we should share.
So we're going to hear all the details in just...
We can go through them one by one. We can start with the idea that this sense that they cannot commit to any long-term presence here because at any point they could be deported. It's also, as your reporter said, means that every 2.5 years there needs to be a reassessment of their situation in an overstretched home that anyway is unable to deal with the number of applications it has to deal with now. So somebody who has fled Eritrea 20 years ago under a dictatorship would have had to have their applications reassessed every 2.5 years. They need to flee from the list your reporter suggested of policies that are both against international law but also entirely counterproductive.
If you accept that the UK does have an immigration problem, are you saying these are simply the wrong tools to fix it?
Well, I mean, I think firstly, I think it is wrong to conflate the UK's protection obligations towards people fleeing persecution and conflict with the wider immigration. UK needed to do something when people were fleeing Ukraine. That's why the
Republicans to vote to release the remaining FBI files related to the sex offender Epstein.
Ahead of that and say, well, he wants them to be released anyway. As you said, he is calling this a democratic hoax. He's been saying that for a long time, but he's trying to shift the attention onto the Democrats, saying that this...
The headlines again. One of the world's biggest political, economic and security meetings is underway in Moscow, with China's Premier Li Chang attending. Our other headlines, Germany's finance...
SCO serves as a useful platform, with China seeking economic integration as a cornerstone of regional stability.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The 24th meeting of the Council of Heads of Government of the Member States of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is being held in Moscow this week. The SCO's role extends far beyond diplomacy. It is a crucial platform for ensuring regional security. And Rovsky, a sinologist and academician with the Russian Academy of...
known in other parts of the world. And for example, for China's top concern is to ensure that Shanghai Cooperation Organization remains a cornerstone of stability amid global fragmentation. The emphasis on industrial cooperation, digital infrastructure, climate change.
Was to start organizing a conference center for dealing with security problems and also anti-narcotics center. So I think it's only started the process of adding more institutions, and it's important at the background of Chairman Xi Jinping's global governance. It is very timely, and I think SCO will become one of the important parts.
Distinctly on the global tone, and it's condemning unilateral sanctions and advocating a more just a representative multipolar system in affairs. And I think that would be an interesting point that in 2025 Taiwan Declaration, it's explicitly criticized the Western sanctions, change water scarcity, public health and security would be one SCO opportunity in the years ahead. And that would make the organization distinct, because somehow I have an impression and it strengthened ties, providing an inclusive platform that bridges regions from East, Central Asia to the Middle East.
Earlier, we talked about the Global Governance Initiative by Yuri. In fact, one of the most important principles of this GGI is the heads of government.
At the SCO summit in Tianjin, the leaders came up with their vision, their directions for what SCO is up to in the next 10 years' time. And most importantly, of course,
much China will contribute, both in cash and also in loans. How much do you think the next steps of establishing the SCO Bank will be discussed? And how will this compare to the already established...
Maybe more better sort of cooperation, or by giving the full play of the spirit of Shanghai spirit. But I think definitely I think it will make, together with previous two development
currencies like Chinese yuan, Russian ruble, Kazakhstan tenge, and that.
So I do believe that, in the past I would argue that probably 20 years ago, Shanghai Organization was associated, I think, with a amorphous, institution that is all about security. But nowadays we see very practical steps towards building this alternative economic order.
Yeah.
Which is in contrast to the Bretton Woods institutions, which unfortunately still promote this unequitable economic order on the global level.
Coming from Central Asia, tell us how important is the
neighboring with the second largest economy? Clear, it is clear, where Eurasian countries stand for. Especially in light of what's going on. The meeting lasted, no offense to our leaders, less than 1 hour. This is the attitude which is like, I would say, United States is giving to life-independent countries, and of course it was also kind of practical. It was all about
Asia in interacting with different players.
Basically, what we need to understand that Kazakhstan, who was one of the founding members, and other Central Asian ideas, and which is the right place with Shanghai cooperation, because we talk about the green.
As a whole, the Central Asia in particular has become more and more. Shanghai Cooperation Contact, SCO Development Bank, which exactly is important in this context. On the one hand, we are working together. On the other hand, arguably, the idea, SCO, is also very much open and inclusive.
The other thing is about trade. Of course, we have seen tariffs, one country against the rest of the world. Now it quite down somewhat,
and increasing the tariffs in the global setting. I believe that all countries will react in their own national way, but I think the and we could see the points already with creation of the bank, with talking about the local currency, with broadening economic agenda.
Yes.
We could see that is a reaction which the countries are trying to pursue.
Very, very unilateral and aggressive approach from Trump's administration, global order, challenging the neoliberal and dollar-centric institutions of the West. So within the, for example, Shanghai Cooperation to build institutional autonomy in trade, in technology, and financial systems. These are essential for countries of the region. The many Shanghai Cooperation Organizations member countries who seek to escape the extractivist role assigned to them, to us in the global value chain. So the Shanghai spirit, based on mutual respect and non-interference, complements the, and by the way,
sure to talk about the full-fledged FTAs in the region, but definitely I think there are growing interest and efforts working on the line. And China has taken some unilateral, it's a different unilateralism in this regard by opening up, and based on the preparations of ground that China has made in terms of infrastructure, FBI, and also I think at the bilateral levels on the question of settlement of local currency and so on, to building a better.
As well as the 10 member states, Moscow has also invited representatives from other countries who've expressed interest in closer ties. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova reports.
President at the Kremlin. We also know that they will be talking about the initiative of the strategic development and 2030. This is something this I believe is of paramount importance to ensure that the ASEO organization is offering some sort of alternative for the international countries. Obviously, the key idea here is that should be provided another platform. And separately on the sidelines, the Russian capital is hosting the Sustainable Economic Development Forum of the ASEO countries, where we are
working with Chinese clients. And as we prepare to open an Oracle Law office in China, I see a strong desire on both sides to maintain stability, its focus on resilience and risk management. But there is also a strong desire to deepen cooperation in areas such as climate action.
Minister Sanai Takayachi said a Chinese attack on Taiwan would pose an existential threat to Tokyo. That's the same phrase
stated in the 1972 document that I mentioned previously, and also the China-Japan Joint Declaration signed in 1998, which focused on building a partnership or friendship, that the Japanese government's commitment on Taiwan question should be upheld and honored. Also, the spokeswoman said that China urged Japanese side to act responsible toward history and the diplomatic relations, stop crossing the line and playing with fire, and also retract the erroneous deeds and words, and also translate its commitment to China into concrete action.
45 Indian pilgrims at least 18 people are now confirmed to have died after 2 landslides in the Java region of Indonesia. Housing and other...
It's a scene that repeats every year, but this winter...
And the bedding was soaked, and we ended up sleeping in the water.
Many families spent long hours out in the open after their tents collapsed, while civil defense crews struggled to reach several of the worst affected areas due to damaged roads and a lack of equipment.
People spent hours outside.
And my child was drenched and shivering along with the rest of my case. I couldn't stop the water, and the tent collapsed on us. We couldn't do anything and spent the night on the street.
The community.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, the UK threatens to ban visas for 3 African countries as part of a radical overhaul of the immigration system.
Stay connected.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. One of the world's biggest political economic people denied asylum from making multiple appeals. The Home Secretary on this announcement.
Well, it looks like the announcement will now take place in about 2.5 hours. That's the latest prediction. But she has been answering questions in the House of Commons ahead of that statement, where she described the upcoming reforms as far-reaching, and she said she had a moral duty to fix the, quote, broken asylum system, which is causing division across the country. In terms of what we can expect, we're expecting her to announce new legislation changing how Article 8 of the European Convention of Human Rights. You'd expect of this. This is what people in the UK say.
I think asylum seekers come here because they know that they're going to get given accommodation, money, you know, a good life without having to work for it.
I think they're rushing it. I think they're responding to a febrile public attitude rather than one that looks like they're in control of the situation. This looks like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yes, okay, I know it's tough when a lot of people come in, but we have so much. And some of these people are coming from places where they have nothing. And I think we should share.
Now, you mentioned in the introduction the warning that's been given to African countries. That's Angola, Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they're being warned.
The law. It's a plan that would put their lives of those refugees in ongoing limbo, this sense that they cannot commit to any long-term presence here because at any point they could be deported. It's also, as your reporter said, means that but also entirely counterproductive.
If you accept that
to do in relation to people fleeing persecution and conflict, I think we all have recognized that the UK needed to do something when people were fleeing Ukraine. That's why the government of the day established specific schemes that, without caps, allowed people from Ukraine to come to the UK, apply to come here without to board any boat to cross the channel. And for some reason, the same logic that applied to Ukraine doesn't seem to apply when we're thinking about conflicts in Sudan, conflicts in Afghanistan, conflicts in Gaza, conflicts in the DRC. And I think that's very troubling, and it's particularly troubling for a Labour government to be adopting this type of mindset and rhetoric.
Chile's presidential, and it's time to move on. Thousands of documents were released by a committee last week, with several mentioning President Trump. Our correspondent Kate Fisher is in Washington.
Yeah, it's a complete about-face, a 360 in fact. We haven't as yet had reaction from some...
Biggest blockbusters. If you ain't strut, Wuhan Fashion Week launches with intangible cultural heritage techniques at the front of its runway. Shopping, shopping, and more shopping. This is really difficult. Whoa, did you see that? So while audiences around the world are tuning into Chinese films, a new wave of...
And I saw, that we had to do this backflip. I thought, it's impossible. There's no way that I could ever do that. But of course I would want to do that.
And more global, foreign faces are increasingly part of the picture. One of them is Carl, an actor who's appeared in Chinese blockbusters and now helps others to do the same.
Who are you? Where are you going?
Carl's journey started with acting but soon turned into a mission, helping foreigners navigate China's fast-growing entertainment scene.
Cosmic is an entertainment company, and we do several things, one of which is we are a foreign talent agency. We represent foreign actors in China. So anytime any Chinese productions need any foreigners, foreign faces of any kind, they come to us. We also train, so here we have acting training. I'm one of the teachers as well as my business partner. We're both career actors, and we train actors, foreign actors in English in the Hollywood style.
Camera work, the quality of the cinematography and stuff like that, in my opinion, has surpassed what is being provided.
Now imagine a stunning scene at Chaoyang Park. The Gucheng meets a Danish jazz trio in an unforgettable improvisation. East blends with West, tradition dances with innovation. This dialogue of strings and shows that traditional Chinese art is alive and evolving, proving that true harmony needs no translation.
Turning the guzheng into an instrument that you can use in the world of jazz music. So joining us from Denmark, from the world of jazz, collaborating together, could you introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Jacob, and I play the double bass.
My name is Nikolaj Kornerup, and I'm the piano player.
Historical Chinese instruments in China. It has 21 strings and with a pentatonic scale. So normally people play on the right side and we bend the other side so in order to get another note. But obviously you can play with both of your hands on the right side. But for a guzheng, collaborating with jazz, it's something really unique.
Very unique.
Yeah.
So, hearing this instrument...
It is two different worlds, because also the instruments are different and they have different volumes and so, but they're also coming from different worlds and tonal worlds. And the tonal world of the Western music
on the mountain. So we rearranged this one, a traditional Chinese folk tune with jazz, and It went so beautifully.
How has the reaction been from the Chinese audience to this fusion of two styles, especially being from Denmark, coming over here?
It's been very good. People are so happy here. Responded very good to the music. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to play.
So what was the difference between
that haven't been done many times before? So,
yeah,
interesting project it is.
Having other instruments, I totally think that's a brilliant idea. You know, we should have more like traditional Chinese music instruments with jazz and a lot of improvisation.
Just different people being put together, and all that always makes like
we do many experiments, and some that didn't work out because of like the physical structure of the guzheng, but but then out of that something, and that's so human. That's what human life's supposed to be, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be from the heart.
Trying different things and seeing what works. Even if it's not great, maybe someone who...
It brings together different cultural elements to create something beautiful and new.
I'm because I'm interested in Chinese culture.
Yeah.
And then there's like and you discover your own culture while coming here because you see the differences, and especially while trying to do a fusion of cultures and music.
An array of international designers and brands for a series of new product launches. The runway became a dynamic stage where the timeless elegance of intangible cultural heritage techniques harmonized with innovative force of smart technology.
Catherine von Reichenberg, a German designer and former member of the haute couture houses of Dior and Chanel, moved to China in 2000. Drawn by the allure of heritage and international trends, technological innovation is injecting fresh energy into fashion's future.
We have integrated outdoor sports with fashion, featuring unique designs on each piece of fabric by applying three-dimensional cutting technology. We create products that seamlessly blend aesthetic and fashionable.
That rush in your chest? That's
videos. They are telling China's story to the world.
Living the new wave. The evolving journey of Chinese culture.
You're watching The Vibe. So good to have you with us because we have more stories for you. There has been a strong reaction.
Policy has been expanded to include 47 categories of duty-free goods, including pet supplies and portable musical instruments. But for those looking for a bargain, what's the best way to shop at the duty-free?
First, you should register for a China duty-free membership. Once you signed up, you'll start earning points. When you shop, these points can be converted into money, which you use to buy items in the store. For example, if you spend 100 yuan, you earn 1 point, and each point...
20 minutes. Within 24 hours, that number soared to over 2 million. The game quickly climbed international charts, ranking 5th among Steam's most played games. The game also made waves on Twitch, immediately claiming the number 2 position. First time the conference is held in the Middle East. How are latest technologies like VR and AR revolutionizing museums today? Our correspondent was at the opening ceremony to tell us.
With as even museums to enhance the visitor experience, to make it one of the most significant global events.
Nothing to hide. President Trump reverses his position on the Epstein files, demanding Republicans release them. China's premier has arrived in Moscow for the 24th meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Li Chang is attending at the request of Russia.
States, and he was holding some bilateral meetings, including with the Iranian Vice President Mohammad Reza Aref, who is in Moscow already. We are also hearing about Chinese Premier Li Qiang arriving in the Russian capital, and the expectation is that the heads of the SCO governments will be hosted by the Russian president at the Kremlin. On the international stage, instead, underfinancing is one of the reasons why that has become as such, and Moscow is now saying that sustainable development goals should be achieved until 2035.
And to restore diplomatic relations, and she also talked about the treaty signed in 1978, the China-Japan Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which reaffirmed the principles stated no ambiguity or distortion. They also constitute a solemn commitment of the Japanese government on...
Pilgrims have died after the bus caught fire in an accident in Saudi Arabia. Only one passenger survived. The group was travelling from Mecca to Medina after completing the Umrah pilgrimage. India's Prime Minister says he's deep 100 Rafale...
Heavy rain has flooded dozens of tents. Across displacement camps in Gaza City, which lack even the most basic means to withstand
on us. All our clothes and bedding were soaked, and we ended up sleeping in the water.
Many families spent long hours out in the open after their tents collapsed, while civil defense crews struggled to reach several of the worst affected areas due to damaged roads and a lack of equipment.
People spent hours outside because their tents were filled with water. The hardest scenes in the past 2 days. The big issue is that just 2 hours of rain caused all this. So what happens if a real winter storm hits Gaza? We're talking about a disaster waiting to happen.
Displaced families fear that this is the equipment needed to protect against flooding, such as tools to remove human waste and prevent rainwater from entering the tents. Faced with a long winter that threatened more than 1 million people living in shelters across Gaza without protection from the elements.
The UK government has just unveiled the biggest overhaul of the country's immigration system in a generation. The plan includes changes to human rights laws.
Yet to come, where we'll get a lot more detail as well. But what we're really expecting from, which in some cases we have seen Britain and it process drag on for very many years for various reasons. Also, those who are granted asylum will only receive it on a temporary basis. So currently it's subject to review every 5 years here.
Work for it.
I think they're rushing it. I think they're responding to a febrile public attitude.
Reform UK. On the other hand, cracking down on illegal migration or irregular migration here in Britain is not a popular Labour policy, especially with the backbenchers. They don't like the policy, they don't like the rhetoric that comes, and such as the winter fuel allowance and things like that. There's had to be U-turns.
Right, we'll wait and see. Correspondent Ray Addison. Well, Dr. Ruvi Ziegler is Associate Professor in International Refugee Law at the University of Reading.
I certainly don't think against the UK's obligation. A bit of the plan is utterly irrational. And some of the other elements that you've just mentioned, for instance, around the potential Trump-style visa ban, policies that are both against international law, but also...
Ecuador is a key transit point for cocaine smugglers. The president's critics say foreign military bases would undermine the country's sovereignty. President Trump says he's open to talks with Venezuela's leadership after related to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He posted online that he has moved on. Thousands of documents were released by a committee last week, with several mentioning President Trump. Our correspondent Kate Fisher is in Washington.
Yeah, it's a complete about-face. Some numbers are to be believed to now back the release of these files.
Juliet, next with Global Business Europe. What have you got?
Well, China's made its Middle East debut at the Dubai show with its C-19 jetliner in the display there. So that's going to be quite exciting to look at. But we've also been flying blind on US data, haven't we? Because of the backlog of data during the shutdown. Now we've got that long-awaited data dump.
Juliet back with the data dump in 60 seconds. The headlines again. One of the world's biggest political, economic and security meetings is underway in Moscow with China's Premier Li Qiang. Our other headlines: Germany's finance minister is in Beijing to strengthen ties with China, their top trading partner. And the UK overhauls its immigration procedures with changes to human rights laws and fast deportations. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. Now from all of the news team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to your weather forecast. Starting with atmospheric circulation. Under the influence of the upper-level low trough, the widespread of precipitation will persist across the continent. You could expect a snowfall in parts of Norway, Sweden, Finland, all the way to northwestern Russia.
Hello, I'm Juliet Mann. Welcome to Global Business Europe. Our top stories. Ties, not tension. China's Vice Premier and Germany's finance. China's Premier is in Moscow for a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Li Qiang is there at the request of Russia's Prime Minister. Moscow says the event's a chance to secure further trade, energy and security ties. The 10 member states include India, Pakistan, Iran and Belarus. Moscow's also invited.
We have been hearing a lot from China and Russia saying in favor of multilateral well-heard, and that means that their economies have to be working much more freely. In these, obviously, these countries would like to see some of consolidated position that will be more heard on the international stage. And we also understand that they will be talking about the SCO development strategy until 2035, and that will be definitely covering the issues that are related to trade. Some other events have also been held in the Russian capital. Aside from those SCO high-level meeting, the Sustainable Development Forum has also been held in Moscow, and we've been there earlier in the day, and the key focus there was on making sure that the countries do have a vision of how they will be achieving those sustainable developmental goals, while also beefing up and developing the businesses domestically.
Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, thanks to SCO states. Yaroslav Sitofilik is the founder of BRICS Plus Analytics Consulting.
Operation organization, the new and greater connectivity within Eurasia.
How much are the signals that you're getting here a reaction, do you think, to the increasingly polarized trade backdrop?
Yes, certainly the trends that we're seeing with, I would say, unprecedented protectionism in the global economy, this is something that is certainly pushing a lot of the economies of the global
environment, resisting unilateral and promoting the stable growth of the world economy.
The German finance minister was upbeat about the relationship between the two, but said there were ways to be even more business dollars at the end of August. Germany imported far more than it exported during that time. China,
with their Chinese peers or the Chinese domestic companies, though they hope very much that the market for the German companies, plus also the general treatment by the regulator and the government is also fair to foreign companies in China.
Okay, and in terms of the trade,
put more in focus our economic interests, the European Union and the European countries as well, more or less in the same direction.
So looking back on 2025 and then looking ahead to what 2020 tourism and retail sector have also plummeted after China warned its citizens against travelling to Japan. Our correspondent Timothy Pope has the latest.
Japanese stocks is an export-heavy economy. Tariffs were always going to be a big deal, and we have seen that with car shipments to the US in particular going off a cliff after the automakers' moves to front-load a lot of those shipments earlier in the year before the tariffs came into full effect.
Shutdown, but this week it's a busy one with new reports being released, giving both investors and analysts a better look at the state of the economy and the job market here in the US. The most important piece of data this week will come on Thursday when the Bureau of Labour releases September's non-farm payrolls report. Now, that report measures a number of people working in the US, including farm employees, self-employed people and military service members, but critically it covers around 80% of people that contribute to the GDP here in the US. So it will give us a strong indication of employment trends, economic growth and other key indicators that investors are watching closely. On the Federal Reserve meeting minutes, they're due out on Thursday, offer more clarity ahead of the Fed's next meeting in early December. We already do have some data out this week. Figures released this morning. Current economic environment, investors have less appetite for riskier investments, and Bitcoin is still seen as one of those.
His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, he was seen in discussions on the stand with the Comac manufacturers, and he had a great tour of the as well. Comac's offering really, given the fact that it's competing against Boeing and Airbus's narrow bodies, given the fact that they also have these supply chain issues, the Western manufacturers, Comac is actually really well placed once US and European safety regulations have passed to provide a viable competitor to those planes. And there are many reasons for that. It is fuel efficient, it can run on sustainable aviation fuel. It's also made of lighter materials, so it generates lower noise, and so it has all these characteristics that are very, very appealing in today's aviation world, where companies are looking for more fuel, more competitive aircraft to fly in a more sustainable environment. And it's also very comfortable inside as well. I've been inside the plane. It's great. It's got all sorts of little nice touches, like a wider middle seat and nice cabin space as well. So it's really got a nice look to it inside as well. So it's been really well received. I've spoken to many visitors who have been on the plane, and they've had plenty of good things to say about it, from pilots who are used to driving these planes to people who are working on corporate jets and in the airline trade as well. So yes, a big buzz at Kobe 919 here.
Shares in advertising giant WPP soared on news of a possible takeover interest from French rival Havas. The group has performed so badly this year, it was in danger of being booted off the FTSE 100 index of leading companies. Our correspondent Li Zhuanhua is there. Great to see.
It's well ahead of the national targets by 2050, and that is why they are working so closely together. So in 2022, they signed this memorandum of understanding on hydrogen cooperation. In 2024 last year, they signed another action plan to expand that cooperation beyond hydrogen to include solar and wind capacity. I've been speaking to some of them today at the forum and listened to some of the keynote speeches. The gist is cooperation is essential, especially with COP30 underway at this point. But what is new this year is they would like to seek more concrete action and concrete projects and cooperation. And chief among them, Mark Shepherd, who is in charge of FDI, foreign direct investment, from the Greater Manchester Inward Investment Agency. He said that he has already been in discussion with some of the Chinese companies and potential,
which is 2038, 12
expanded, and also one of the largest producers of solar and wind power. And the UK
atmosphere when the tomatoes are eaten and digested. Despite the limited environmental effect, this project
Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, here's Uche Okoko with the day's business headlines.
Thank you, Beatrice. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Like This. MTN, Africa's largest telecom operator, reports a 26% increase in revenues. And Ugandans are reeling in debt amid a rise in digital lending apps. Of course, all of that coming up within the program of an item.
Uche, thank you. China has once again demanded Japan retract Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's comments where she hinted at military intervention in the...
The statement made by Takaichi is erroneous. And she referred back to 4 documents that laid a foundation on such issues, such as the China-Japan joint statement that has restored for China and Japan to restore diplomatic relations, on advancing strategic and mutual beneficial relations. What we're seeing here is these 4 documents actually laid the foundation.
Question: China has consistently maintained that it's an internal affair. Successive Japanese governments have consistently refrained from making decisive statements akin to
the brutal reality of war. Prime Minister Takaichi, a Bangladesh war court has sentenced ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death in absentia for crimes against humanity, ruling that she ordered a deadly crackdown of last year's student-led uprising. The verdict was delivered in Dhaka under tight security, and in Hasina, police say a joint team of security forces has now launched a search and rescue operation.
This attack was made, so they say they were on patrol.
Nigeria has seen similar incidents in the past, the Chibok abduction in 2014 and Dap in 2018. Of which triggered global outrage and left deep scars. This latest attack adds to growing security concerns across the country, with critics urging the government to prioritize threats against schools. Rescue operations are ongoing as authorities work to secure the safe return of abducted students. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
To the Democratic Republic of Congo now, where at least 32 people have died after a bridge collapsed at a mining site in the southeast. This is according to the provincial minister, who added that the search for more bodies continues. The incident occurred at the Kailando mine in Lualaba province on Saturday, where an access ban had...
These accidents are very common in the DRC, but the government says they have deployed soldiers and are working with the local authorities to streamline this industry. Just last week, government agency known as the Entreprise Générale du Cobalt said that they had launched the first production of 1,000 tons of traceable cobalt. So basically, they're trying to formalize.
At least were killed and many others wounded when a drone strike hit a gold mine along the Sudan-Libya border in North Darfur. Local officials say the drone was most likely operated by the Sudanese army.
President Julius Maada Bio will also discuss the gap between early warnings of famine and action and Hamas's objections to the deployment of an
local time, so around 5 hours from now, and it comes as members, as you mentioned, have been discussing food insecurity, the establishment of what's been called the Board of Peace as a transitional governance, very much hoping that they will pass around 5 o'clock local time here in New York this evening.
All right, Mitch McCann joining us there from New York. Thank you. Well, let's now turn to Ethiopia, where 3 people have died from the Marburg virus, while another 3 deaths are being investigated in possible connection to the disease. This is according to the country's health ministry, which on Friday confirmed an outbreak of the disease in a town in the southern Ethiopian region with at least 9 cases. The ministry said 129 people who are in contact, mostly from richer nations. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is expected to arrive at the summit on Wednesday to help rally consensus among the different parties. Our correspondent Nadra Al-Tibi reports from Gaza.
It's a scene that repeats every year, but this winter, with far greater severity, heavy rain has flooded dozens of tents across displacement camps in Gaza City, which lack even the most basic means to withstand the winter. Families tried desperately to stop the water from entering, but the downpour quickly turned the ground into mud and poured into the tents, soaking mattresses, blankets, and clothing, and leaving children exposed to the cold.
It was an extremely difficult night. The rain came down like a flood. We tried to stop.
We're talking about a disaster waiting to happen.
Displaced families fear that this is only the beginning of a much harsher winter, when the communities here lack the equipment such as tools to remove human waste and prevent rainwater from entering the tents.
Percent of Africa's largest tropical rainforest, but decades of conflict and instability have made conservation a major challenge. CGTN's Chris.
Most of the armed groups in our country are protected areas. We can start by citing the Virunga National Park, which is paying a heavy burden today. We have other forests that we are managing near the border with the Central African Republic, where incursion rebels disrupt our conservation efforts.
Earlier this year, the DRC government launched the Kivu-Kinshasa Green Corridor project to address insecurity and environment for oil and gas exploration near tropical forests.
A challenging and complex task.
Texts before to help preserve the scholarly work recorded in the texts. However, security concerns continue to impede research and preservation activities. Armed terror groups remain active in the region.
Some people are still afraid because they think it's not safe in the north of Mali. This fear often stops them from coming here to do the work they need to do, which is related to the manuscripts.
Now, historians and local scholars are related that the patience and hard work of local volunteers has helped safeguard and preserve Timbuktu's ancient manuscripts for use by people from all over the world.
Shore returns are now turning into a dangerous trap for many. CGTN's Michael Baleke tells us more.
It looks simple.
In the beginning, the interest looks low and tempting.
They added that excluding the effect of currency fluctuations, group service revenue increased by 22.6%. Now, of course, MTN Nigeria led that growth with a 57.1% rise in service revenues, while MTN Ghana rose 35.9%. Supported by input into service on most local routes there. Move is part of the city's broader strategy to cut its carbon emissions through e-mobility. CGTN Travis Andrews tells us more.
The city of Cape Town has bold ambitions to become carbon neutral by 2050, and it's doing it through a number of ways, including electrifying the public transport system.
Europe to be tested, them on the South African roads legally.
For now, EV experts say there remains a big gap in the market that requires investment in testing facilities in the country so that local production and services can continue on.
Tensions continue between Somalia's federal government and the self-declared region of Somaliland over the control of the country's airspace. The dispute escalated its national airspace in accordance with national and international aviation law. According to Somalia's civil aviation, between 500 and 600 flights transit Somalia's airspace every 24 hours since its upgrade to Class A in 2023, generating an estimated $32 million in annual.
In fact, in early August, Japan's auto shipments to the U.S., the country's largest trading partner, dropped more than 24% in September, and that's slightly order. Emirates, wholly owned by the Dubai government, is the world's most profitable
of aircraft order, but I assure you that each and every one of our aircraft on order has been carefully factored into Emirates' growth plans.
Well, let's head to China now, where Hainan's new free trade port is creating a wave of economic opportunity, from duty-free shopping to tariff-free business imports. Now, this
from the 19th century
People from Hainan left for Southeast.
This time to fuel development. In the first commercial office tower, I met Andy Chan. His great-great-grandfather's generation had made the journey to Thailand long ago. So long ago that even he didn't know the exact year.
My great-great-grandfather brought this chair back from Thailand, fully assembled.
We sat on this chair, a witness to generations of effort and ambition, listening as Chen told the story of his
trade, and with Hainan's free trade port policies, his products can come in duty-free and then be sold to other provinces. You can imagine a business like that would draw a lot of interest.
Chen is just one of many overseas Chinese investing in Hainan, air and marine industry.
Overseas Chinese sent money home. For example, the Wenan Old Street, where we are now, was built in 1920, with contributions from returning overseas Chinese. Today, seeing the strength of China and opportunities in the Hainan Free Trade Port, overseas compatriots are taking a more active role, investing and build the region's future.
In Wenchang, once famous for its overseas Chinese, history is coming full circle. Where money once arrived in envelopes, investment now flows through digital platforms and venture funds.
And let's start your sport with African football. The Democratic Republic of Congo has inched closer to qualifying for the 2026 FIFA World Cup finals after a 4-3 victory on penalties over Nigeria in the African playoffs final. Nigeria, who are 19 places above DR Congo in the world rankings, were the pre-match favourites. And they finals, Nigeria's Victor Osimhen has made the shortlist of the 2025 CAF Men's Player of the Year awards. Osimhen is shortlisted alongside Moroccan Achraf Hakimi and Egyptian Mohamed Salah in the battle for the continent's best male player. In the women's category, Morocco's Ghislaine Chak and Sana Musudi also made the shortlist alongside Nigeria's Rashidat Ajibade. The award ceremony will be held in Rabat, Morocco on Wednesday. In other football news, four-time world champions Germany host Slovakia in
a knockout game like this, and we all assume that we will play well and that we can get the 3 points.
231 wins. Following the hard-fought victory, Sina expressed his joy at winning the season-ending, and Domantas Sabonis added a double-double of 17 and 13 rebounds in their efforts. In motorsport, Marco Bezzecchi led from start to finish to take the checkered flag at MotoGP season finale at the Valencia Grand Prix. Uche Okoronkwo is up next with Global Business. Bye-bye.
welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Our global markets remain pretty nervous this Monday, as the focus this week will be on U.S. data releases. Of course, they'll provide some clues on the health of the world's largest economy. A bridge collapses at a mining site in the DRC. South Africa secures its first credit rating upgrade in nearly 20 years. DRC small-scale business traders welcome reinstatement of a law that bars foreigners from the sector. Well, we'll start off tonight's show in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 32 people have died after a bridge collapsed.
Saying the figure is more than 70 people, but the government says it's 32. Now, those
18 artisanal miners, including women and children, were killed in Mali. The incident occurred in an open-pit gold mine after a tunnel where they were digging for gold flooded near Danga village in the Tombouctou region. And in January, South African police ended a rescue operation at an abandoned gold mine in the Northwest Province. At least 78 miners were confirmed dead and 246 survivors were rescued. Police had encircled the Stilfontein mine to force miners to surface as part of a government crackdown on illicit mining there. Let's shift our focus now to Sudan.
Side Al-Malha, a strategic locality seized by the RSF in March. Al-Malha sits about 210 kilometers north of Al-Fashir and connects to vital supply routes stretching toward Libya, continues to worsen. Aid agencies report growing displacement, extreme limited access to affected communities, and rising shortages of food, medicine, and safe basic for civilians trapped by the fighting. Naba Muhiddin, CGTN, Port Sudan.
Well, let's go back to South Africa now. The country has secured a
for South Africa. We still are 2 notches below investment grade from both S&P 500, S&P, and also Moody's, which is about three notches below investment grade. Effective years of primary surpluses on the budget. And that's positive. As I said to you, that there's been significant reforms that's been helping. GDP growth has been tepid over the last 10 years, and we expect it to improve in the next couple of years. It's not going to be easy to do that, but with the reforms in place and the freight volumes increasing, confidence returning, the S&P increasing credit rating of South Africa by 1 notch. Those are all positive factors. The issuing of water licenses also for the private sector to be involved in providing infrastructure for water. That's also positive. Electricity. There's been a significant amount of renewable investment. That all bodes well for South Africa. But we can't be certain about it. As I said, there's still crime and corruption we've got to sort out, and we will over the next few years.
Right. And I'd like to get your take on 2 other factors.
It's a bit of a surprise, possibly the loss of AGOA, yes, that we know about.
Julie Shire tells us more.
Across South Africa, communities continue to struggle with homelessness, poor services and economic exclusion. Now ahead of the G20, the Civil 20 or C20 is giving those communities a platform to influence global priorities.
It is first influencing the leaders to listen to the people to make...
What hindered my business from growing?
Komani's message to G20 leaders is simple. Remove barriers and make trade fair and accessible to everyone.
The most important is access to information to simplify these trade laws so that each and every person that has interest to trade understands them easier, and it's better to go into trade.
And South Africa.
Well, let's move on now and take a look at our corporate highlights this Monday. Lower growth of 2% in its home market of South Africa. Its data revenues increased by 40%, driven by an expansion of active data and also strong demand. Fintech revenues rose 35.7% as customer numbers grew 5% to 301 million. Grow by 34%, with Nigeria leading the markets with a 30% increase in revenues. On the operational side, physical goods grew 30% year on year, and quarterly active customers increased by 23%. Jumia also cut its workforce by 7% within the last year as it turns to AI to boost in January 2026. Paramount Bank is a mid-tier lender with capital of about $20 million and a network of 8 branches. The bank has been facing pressure to recapitalize after Kenya's Apex Bank recently raised the minimum capital requirements. Now, if approved, Zenith Bank break now, but still to come on the show. We will delve
on-the-ground perspective. We provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business. Only on
drop in pre-tax losses to $50.4 million. Jumia's management is also forecasting pre-tax losses of $50.5 million for the year 2025 and $25 to $30 million for 2026. It estimates that the retailer will be profitable in 2027. Now, after exiting South Africa, well, Jumia is forecasting order growth rates of at least 25% this year, with a strong performance in the fourth quarter, of course boosted by 4 weeks of
like basis in hard currency, and also continued improvement of our efficiency. Underestimate
had on the analyst call after the results came out. I got the impression that the argument you also made to them was, look, our logistics expertise is essentially a sort of moat for Jumia, even though you've got, entrants like Shein and some of these markets, Nigeria, Kenya, and so on and so forth. But my reading of what you said was, look, our logistics expertise is what will give us an edge vis-a-vis all of these entrants from outside the continent.
So, Rama, I think it's definitely the right reading. Thank you. That's the right conclusion. We believe that we have deeply adapted the e-commerce business model to customers and partners in our markets across Africa. And this level of adaptation is actually very hard to replicate for any foreign company coming to, Nigeria or more attention. We always aim to bring better products at better prices for our customers. What has happened, though, is that it's massively improved. First of all, the macroeconomic situation is helping us in a way. The currency stability is enabling importers to do their jobs, right, without taking too much risk. So there's a lot more supply on our place. The recent pivot from Chinese manufacturers, well, I think over the past 3 years, if you take just the past 3 years, first of all, there was a lot of currency volatility in key markets, Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, for example. And when that happened with the US, we really, with our Chinese partners and
moments, school fees, food, or medical bills.
I receive the money right on my phone whenever I need it and very quickly. It's helped me and others save a lot.
And tempting, but as you go on, it rises sharply. When we fall behind on payments, debt collectors even call our relatives and friends. It's very stressful, but we depend on loans to get by.
Uganda's Department of Microfinance Regulation, which supervises digital money lenders, says it is responding to rising complaints of harassment, data misuse, and unfair lending practices. Lending will expand financial inclusion, but without strong checks, it risks pushing vulnerable people further into poverty. Regulators say they are tightening oversight and taking action against lenders operating outside the law.
In 2024, a list of apps that we delisted them, and we cautioned Ugandans from not using those apps because they were not falling under any regulated company. We do not know 1% of the population of Ugandans, financially included.
For now, the debate continues, and the
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's head into a short break now, but still to come on the show.
Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there.
Welcome back. Now, senior Japanese diplomat has reportedly arrived in Beijing to ease those tensions. The Chinese Foreign Ministry urged Japan to uphold its historical commitments, particularly regarding the One China principle, as stated in the 1972 China-Japan joint statement. Xiuwan has more.
Mao said this afternoon that the statement made by Takanaki is erroneous. And she referred back to 4 documents that laid a foundation on such issues, such as the China-Japan joint statement that has restored for China and to restore diplomatic relations. And she also talked about the treaty signed in 1978, the China-Japan Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which reaffirmed the principles stated in the 1972 document that previously, and also the China-Japan joint declaration signed in 1998, which focused on building a partnership of friendship and cooperation for peace and development. Another joint statement signed in 2008 on advancing strategic and mutual beneficial relations. What we're seeing is this documents actually laid the foundation that restated that Taiwan is a sacred and inseparable part of China. And these are the clear provisions laid out.
The Ministry of Culture and Tourism has advised its citizens to avoid traveling to Japan, citing security concerns. Chinese airlines have now announced that they will offer free cancellations for Japan-bound flights. Our reporter Yu Yang has more.
A number of Chinese airlines have announced that they will offer full refunds for flights to Japan after 5% fewer than 5 weeks earlier.
The major consideration for Chinese authorities to issue those travel alerts is the security of Chinese citizens. As we know, recently in Japan, there have been some incidents that threaten the safety of Chinese citizens. On the other hand, regarding Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's provocative remarks on the Taiwan question, I think this is also a way to express China's dissatisfaction and to put some pressure on bilateral people-to-people exchanges.
After 2.2 trillion Japanese yen, or about $14 billion.
Yes, if the number of Chinese travelers to Japan largely reduces, it will of course have huge impacts on Japan's tourism industry because Japan relies heavily on Chinese spending on shopping, catering and accommodation. The local economies of some top tourist areas in the country, for example regions like Hokkaido, Osaka, Okinawa and Kyushu, are likely to be affected.
Solution.
Areas. We can start by citing the Virunga National Park, which is paying a heavy burden today. We have other forests that we are managing near the border with the Central African Republic, where incursions by rebels disrupt our conservation efforts.
Earlier this year, the DRC government launched
Today, the decision to open 52 oil blocks for exploration in the Couvé Central pit
$4,070 an ounce, although the precious metal has soared about 55% this year from a price of $2,624 per ounce on January 1st. Now, this is of course fueled by safe haven demand.
Africa, and no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
2010 held in Africa for the first time cast a global net to find the biggest solutions to 3 challenges: building secure digital identity systems, enabling cross-border data sharing to unlock financing, and developing
with the same digital certificate that we have provided you with. So instead of you going from bank A 2, 3, 4, 5, doing the same thing, we'll give you that certificate that this is the trusted provider that did my digital identity.
Cross-border data sharing, crucial for smoother financing, remains a major hurdle. Singapore's Silent Laboratories, winner in the credit portability category, aims to cut through those barriers.
We have developed a cross-border inference engine which enables financial institutions in different jurisdictions to collaborate on sensitive data without ever revealing any raw information. So use cases such as cross-border lending for SMEs can be done with ease and at low cost, with trusted and verified information.
To be able to do collaborative response against foreign scams. So consumers can talk to AI agents that take a complaint, and then at the back we go and collaborate with financial institutions to find money back.
Cash may still be king across Africa, but bolstering digital security and widening access to formal finance are central pillars to South Africa's G20 presidency. And technology is a key tool to address
hopes that will soon change after the government barred foreigners from operating small retail shops.
I'm launching a strong appeal to our Minister of Commerce to implement that decision, because nowadays Lebanese who are selling caps and belts in retail just like us.
A law enacted way back in 1973 reserved small-scale trade for Congolese citizens. But past administration...
No confusion. There are laws emphasizing on the fact that each country has a kind of area, protected area.
Days after the foreigners leave.
Political instability, corruption and conflict in the DRC have caused widespread poverty across the country, forcing many citizens to carry out odd jobs to survive. Some foreigners have invested massively in the mining sector, but others are in the retail.
Thanks for watching.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Asiye Namdar in Washington. We begin with an about-face for U.S. President Donald Trump and the controversy surrounding his time.
To the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, Epstein was a convicted sex offender with ties to several prominent figures in American politics. He died in jail by suicide in 2019. Last week, Democrats in Congress secured a key number of signatures to force a vote on the issue. And this weekend, several Epstein survivors released a public service announcement urging lawmakers to release the files.
Additional information released through the Epstein files is highly unlikely to change anybody's mind that has already been made up. That's not what this
discharge petition anyway, so Donald Trump got in front of it by endorsing it.
Can you perhaps explain to our international audience who may not be following the story closely why these Epstein files matter politically, why they're such a big deal, and what the implications are here for President Donald Trump?
Well, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal involves just some bone-chilling allegations and
files to be released. Her apology about her toxic rhetoric, if you will. I guess my question to you is this a genuine, authentic from Professor, or is this just for show or for political gains?
Well, it's hard to plumb the depths of someone's soul and fully know, but I think this reveals that Donald Trump has broken political gravity of normal American politics in every kind of occasion possible, except for the fact he can't be on the ballot in 2028. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe she has, like many Congress people, has grown and matured the longer she's been there. She wouldn't be the first. But also, I think she's vying to be the leader of the Republican Party because Donald Trump is not going to run for a third term. He jokes about it. He talks about it, but everyone understands that this is probably not going to happen. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, is vying to be, the leader of the Republican Party, by 2028.
I mean, what a switch for her. And Professor, does the spat with Greene reflect even something bigger? President Trump perhaps losing his grip or influence on his fellow fellow Republicans, I should say.
Look, Donald Trump
change anything?
I'm not sure the files will be released. The Senate...
Turning now to Bangladesh, where the ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death. A special tribunal found her guilty of crimes against humanity in connection to last year's mass uprising by student protesters. Hasina is accused of inciting and ordering a violent crackdown that killed hundreds of people. Protesters and victims' families in Dhaka welcomed the sentence. The 70-year-old Hasina, who fled to India last year, says the court's decision is politically motivated. The UN human rights body hailed the moment as important for the victims, but added it opposes the death penalty. Communist Party politician Janet Jara has won the first round of voting in Chile. She faces her far-right rival in a divisive runoff next month. John Bartlett reports from Santiago.
Chileans cast their ballots on Sunday in a mandatory general election, with two starkly contrasting candidates progressing to a runoff next month. Janet won 27% of the vote, the highest share of candidates, much as the polls had predicted. She will be joined the next month's runoff vote, in which participation will also be mandatory, by far-right José Antonio Cast, who took 24% of the vote. As expected,
which means that the rights that we've managed to secure up until now for women, even sexual harassment legislation, which means we can move about freely and dress how we like, is going to be undone as well.
It feels like we don't really know what the country wants. There are things which go along with what I would like for Chile and others which I don't. It's all quite confusing.
The four right candidates, Cast among them, took a combined share of more than 70% of the vote on Sunday. Cast used his acceptance speech to appeal to the unity of Chile's right wing. We will find out on December 14th which of the two contrasting visions.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving.
We need to talk to one another.
And listen.
More than 1 billion voices telling their stories. Rediscovering China, only on CGTN.
A warning on the final week of COP30 in Brazil. Environmental groups say government promises are falling short. Now, representatives from vulnerable nations.
Unlike other worker replacing technologies, this machine promise, as Saika says its business model is putting the bot into the hands of local pickers and creating many more paying jobs in the process.
We're not harming the environment. To the contrary, we're transforming what used to be waste into income. There's no deforestation in our system, and the fruit that's now lost will finally be collected, processed, and sold elsewhere.
The Acai market is projected to surpass $3 billion by 2029, according to the latest Research and Markets report. That will be possible in part because of sometimes small but powerful innovations.
CO2 from the heater to the tomato plants. But first the gas needs to be treated.
The CO2 from the wood burning system is dirty, and so we have to clean it with a complicated process.
The exhaust flue gas from the boiler first runs through tanks, which filter out sulfide and other harmful substances, creating 12 tons of pure CO2 each day that is piped into the greenhouse. The tomato plants absorb most of the CO2 gas, which is then, however, an innovative step at the price.
Than ever before. The artillery strikes on Ukraine that have smashed homes and roads and knocked out power as winter temperatures arrive.
Lines are resuming their normal schedule.
Weather across the Pacific Ocean are reduced by 1/3, and the port is providing local employment. More than half of the workers are from Chiang-Kai, and 20% are women, like control port operator Kelly in Chiang-Kai, Peru.
And finally, to the Dubai Air Show this year, it's bringing together more than 1,500 exhibitors and hundreds of aircraft. It's considered the biggest event of its kind in the region. Also on display, latest innovations in aerospace technologies and advanced defense systems. including a passenger and business jet from China. China is also showcasing fighter and stealth fighter jets, along with unmanned aerial vehicles. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. I'm Asiye Namdar in Washington. We'll be back with more news at the top of the hour. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The 24th meeting of the Council of Heads of Government of the Member States of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a sinologist and academician with the Russian Academy of Natural Studies, and also in Beijing, Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. I want to start by asking Kuat your thoughts on the upcoming Council of
Beijing for sure will push for tight economic coordination and infrastructure integration under the Belt and Road Initiative, especially with Eurasian economies that feel
international organization, and it has several institutions, but not enough institutions. So intended, they added several major amendments, like the decision to start
the topics on the agenda. Your thoughts?
What I would like to mention up front that we see the new dynamic by 2023-2025 about SCO statements which took on the global tone, and it's condemning unilateral sanctions and advocating a more just representative multi-policy in the world affairs. And I think that would be an interesting point that in 2025 Taiwan Declaration, it's explicitly criticized health and cybersecurity would be one of the SCO opportunity in the years ahead. And that would make the organization for SCO the global standing after 25 years.
Mentioned. So I think, and last but not least, the institutional reforms, which are also very much important in terms of strengthening or incorporating the different layers or type of groups. So now we have 10 full groups.
And how will this compare to the already established, BRICS Bank, Development Bank, that has already headquartered in Shanghai?
I'm quite optimistic because I think in this regard, in other words, the development banks like SCOs and others, now we have good experience. First and foremost, the AIIB, which has proved very successful so far. And also the BRICS development banks.
There is another initiative of local currency and financial cooperation.
I mean, there's so many organizations, there's a clear division between the growing aggressive rhetoric from the West, and the need for many Eurasian countries to industrialize or reindustrialize. We need these countries need a practical, developmental paradigm shift, I would say.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to launch the development bank, expand local currency trade platforms, and articulate a regional industrialization vision that Central Asia, for example, to escape the post-Soviet raw material trade. For countries such as Kazakhstan and its neighbors, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's success hinges on whether it becomes a platform of strategic sovereignty and not just a geopolitical posture. So I believe that in the past I would argue that probably 20 years ago, Shanghai Cooperation Organization was associated something with a very amorphous, institution that is all about security. But nowadays we see very practical states. The second largest economy. I would say the approach from the American kind of emperor.
Participate in other alliances, in other organizations, but as well as maintain dialogue with European Union, with United States of America. But notable benefits for Central Asia with regards to Shanghai Cooperation, I would say several stands: security assurance, economic opportunities, and basically, if we talk about the Kazakhstan perspectives, we have to remember it is the largest economy in Central Asia, and
to look at taking care of the not only at the development bank, which exactly I think important in this.
Is members of Eurasian Union, Eurasian Union system, but at the same time, almost all Central Asian countries are members of WTO. So from that side, there was no any kind of issues. I think that, of course, the issue with the so-called deglobalization or the issues with the trade became the global agenda because of this very close and more equitable global order, challenging the neoliberal and dollar-centric institutions of the West. So within the, for example, Shanghai Organization, this global governance initiative serves as a framework to build institutional autonomy in trade, in technology, and financial systems. These are essential for countries of the region. The many Shanghai Cooperation Organizations member countries who seek to escape this extractivist role assigned to them, to us in the global value chain. So the Shanghai spirit, based on mutual respect.
Taking some unilateral, that's a different unilateralism in this regard by opening up and based on the preparations of ground that China has made in terms of FBI, and also I see the bilateral levels on the question settlement of local currency and so on and so forth. 4, to building a better, safe, and stable regional supply chain that in the end will benefit all.
Everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Asiye Namdar in Washington, and we begin with that
hoax. But the social media post marks a dramatic departure from previous messaging.
That's not what this is about at this point. What this is and needs
seeing a re-election a year from now, and they understand that this issue their constituents pay attention to. So Republicans were going to pass this discharge petition anyway, so Donald Trump got in front of it by endorsing it.
Professor, let me move on to the public feud between President Trump and Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the president's most ardent and vocal supporters, known for her divisive, confrontational rhetoric. Now she's painting herself as someone who can bring unity.
Except for the fact he can't be on the ballot in 2028. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe she has, like many Congress people, has grown and matured the longer she's been there. She wouldn't be the first. But also, I think she's vying to be the leader of the Republican Party because Donald Trump is not going to run for a third term. He jokes about it. He talks about it. But everyone understands that this is probably not going to happen. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, is vying to be, the leader of the Republican Party by 2028. What we're going to see over the next 3 years is that Donald Trump's influence is going to wane. And this is what happens with every president who cannot run for office again. We're going to see this especially the closer we get to the midterms. And Republicans are going to see that their political future is in their own hands and no longer going to be tied to somebody who is never going to be on at least a national political ballot ever again.
And for the victims, but added it opposes the death penalty.
With so many candidates vying for position on the right, analysts now predict that their votes will go to Jose Antonio Cast, and Jara hasn't on Sunday. Cast used his acceptance speech to appeal to the unity of Chile's right wing. We will find out on December 14th if the two contrasting visions for the country's future prevails. John Bartlett, CGTN, Santiago, Chile.
Voters in Ecuador have rejected a measure that would have allowed foreign military bases back in the country. The result is regarded as military drills off the coast of Venezuela. CGTN.
The Trump administration repeatedly targeting what it calls drug trafficking boats, alleged linked to both Colombia and Venezuela, while sanctioning both countries. On Sunday, the U.S. military announced it had carried out another lethal strike on a suspected drug boat in international waters in the Eastern Pacific. And even as Trump...
We give an expanded view on global business, how it covers, influences, or relates to the whole world.
We are universal. Money moves markets. We explain these trends and show you how the cash in your pocket can have a wide-reaching effect. Because money makes the world go round. Global business.
At least 3 people were killed by Russian missile attacks in eastern Ukraine. 10 others were wounded, including 3 teenagers. Both sides have denied targeting civilians. Joint news conference. A warning on the final week of COP30 in Brazil. Environmental groups say government promises are falling short in halting the rapid destruction of the world's vulnerable nations. Also stressed the importance of global commitments to cut emissions and decrease climate-fueled hurricanes. They also called for rich nations to do more to help poorer countries with financing. Well, for generations, acai berries have been handpicked deep in the Amazon rainforest. Now technology is job faster and easier while improving the take-home pay. And as Lucrecia Franco reports, that's changing how one of the region's most recognized fruits is being harvested.
Strapping on a palm leaf harness, then climbing. Harvesting acai berries is difficult work that poses serious risks of falling. But this remote-controlled model called Acai Bot is coming to the rescue. Unlike other worker-replacing technologies, this machine promises the latest research and markets report. That will be possible in part.
The environmental effect, this project shows how carbon capture...
If we want to achieve net zero.
An innovative step.
All you need to know about China. China 24. Only on CGTN. Facing the unknown is always difficult.
Explain these trends and show you how the cash in your pocket can have a wide-reaching effect. Because money makes the world go round. Global business.
in air traffic control facilities.
It does appear that air traffic controllers are working. The call-outs are minimal, and they're all getting bonuses now if they came to work. So I think the morale there is up, as well as the TSA.
Union leaders say it was hard for air traffic controllers to work full-time without pay during the shutdown.
The stresses, the pressure, the fatigue is setting in.
Host Dan Collins reports.
It's been 1 year since Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Peruvian counterpart Dina Boluarte inaugurated the megaport of Chancay, a coastal town about 80 kilometers north of Lima. Majority owned by the Chinese shipping giant COSCO, the ultra-modern deep-water. At the same time, Peru's top agri-exports, blueberries, grapes and avocados, are reaching supermarket shelves in Shanghai and the rest of China. Dan Collins, CGTN, Chancay, Peru.
And finally, the Dubai Air Show this year is bringing together more than 1,500 exhibitors and hundreds of aircraft. It's considered the biggest event of its kind in the region. Also on display, the latest innovations in aerospace technologies and advanced defense systems, including a passenger and business jet from China that are making their debut in the Middle East. China is also showcasing fighter and stealth fighter jets, along with unmanned aerial vehicles. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching.
Hello and welcome to the CGTN special series, Journey to Modernization. Over the past year, quality and climate change, and Dean of Society Hub at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, Guangzhou. Dimitri de Boer, Regional Director for Asia and Chief Representative for China at Client Earth. Ma Jun, Director of Institute for Public and Environmental Affairs. Dr. Michelle Maiden, Head of China Energy Research at Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, and Lau everywhere. Let's take a look.
And looking back, I think this is in every major area related to the environment and ecology, even biodiversity. And Qinghai appears to be such a green place and also a major hub for green energy production. So I think this is it's quite amazing change.
Dimitri, you also live in China. Do you agree this is basically comprehensive change here?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been here for 22 years now in Beijing, and working with the Ministry of Environment and the Supreme Court and Supreme Procuratorate for the last 10 years. And it's phenomenal. The improvement in the air quality and the sense of safety around the environmental governance in a mess.
Need to be done, by the government, by the public, and also by all the participants.
I mean, I think certainly coal stands out as the key contributors to ongoing pollution. I mean, I think you do have to echo it. I was a student in Beijing 20 years ago. I remember the bikes, but I also remember the smell of coal. So I think the transformation to electric vehicles has been phenomenal and has really changed how people move around, how people think about they use energy. But there is a need for even more sort of societal impact, ongoing change, both in industry, and of course there's the other issue of big industries and duplication of industries across provinces that could really help China reduce and tackle its ongoing problems of air pollution, despite the amazing gains and improvements that have already been made.
Ma Jun, if you look at the
increase of energy consumption and industrial production, and along with that, unfortunately, the enormous pollution discharge, which exposed the people, to health hazards, and even before the air pollution was the water pollution. At that time, the water pollution, water shortage, and destruction of the ecosystem was also very, very serious. Through all this, years of efforts, I would say, not just, on the air side, but on the water side, we have seen a improvement, and the worse than Category 5 or good for no use category of water have dropped from 28% in 2006 to below 1%.
Change of attitudes or awareness.
From much about environmental efforts as something like a burden or something that you need to choose between development or environmental protection. These days, that's not the case at all. All of those green sectors doing so well. Those are actually the economy isn't doing great, right? But these sectors, wow, they're booming, right? So everybody now sees the green sectors as the most productive, the better economic opportunity, and they are. They are in fact positioning China now in the world as potentially the most strategic country, with all of these strategic sectors that we know we're going to need in the next decades to come.
Michelle, there's often
in China have this massive resource endowment of coal, and yet with quite a strong political will move away from it. I think also that equation that used to be, and that Professor Ye talked about earlier, that you had to industrialize and pollute first, or that there was a trade-off, and Dimitri talked about that trade-off between growth and environmental protection. That has changed dramatically with the availability of relatively low-cost clean tech. A lot of that, of course, thanks to China. But I think there are different development models that can be adopted in emerging economies. They take work, right? It's not just about how development.
Have a conversation with people next to me because I was being, the noise on the street. So electric,
it's quite affordable.
It's amazing, right? Yeah. So that's modernization.
That's modernization. Laurie, there's a piece by Bloomberg. Basically, it said that, as
that you attributed to someone else. So the result of my analysis is that if China can bring forward
increasingly in Europe as well as in the US, we used to talk about the trilemma, right? The energy trilemma about security, availability, affordability. Now what's coming into the mix also is industrial competitiveness. And we can't have it all, as was just said. I mean, if we want misunderstandings in the West, where if we impose duties or tariffs on Chinese goods, then that will help create these sectors in the West. And I think that's not true. I think that underestimates the amount of innovation, the amount of technology that feels sort of quite low on collaboration and high on competition. Hopefully we will be able to change that through greater communication.
Professor Qi, if you look at the energy sector, of course, on one hand, we want to reduce the use of coal. On the other hand, we want to increase the percentage of the renewable energy. What are the challenges in that path?
The only problem with the solar and wind is this intermittency. This is during the day, it's okay, we get the solar energy, but during the night, and we need to have a energy storage.
It's a technology issue.
It's a technological issue for this storing that electricity. It is also a technology issue for the overall power grid. And we have perhaps a large... Exactly.
Marjin, earlier you mentioned about actually this new energy industrial chain in China. You also talked about this carbon intensive industries, the challenges remaining in those industries. Take that all into consideration. What can we do? Or what kind of government, like NGO like yours, and also the industries? Is there a consensus? Do we have a clear path forward? What do we need to do?
Yeah, I think there's an increasing consensus with our position. I think it's based on massive monitoring, making for green supply chain, finance, and green consumption.
Let's turn to our audience to see if there are any questions. Panel of distinguished guests and also audience for joining us for this discussion of the CGT special series, Journey to Modernization. I'm Xu Qinduo. See you next time.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new
facilities.
It does appear that air traffic controllers are working. The call-outs are minimal, and they're all getting bonuses now if they came to work. So I think the
relations with China's foreign ministry, referencing a deteriorating security environment for Chinese citizens living in Japan. CGTN's Yo Yan takes a look at how flights will be affected by all
travel tickets. And the flights from the Chinese mainland to Japan have been declining in recent weeks. And data gathered by Chinese industry information provider Yumitrip shows that nearly 1,200 flights operated in the week ending November 9. And actually, data released by Japan's National Tourism Organization shows that in the first 3 quarters of this year, nearly 7.5 million tourists from the Chinese mainland visited Japan, a year-on-year increase of over 42%. Making
visitors spending on shopping, catering and accommodation. The local economies of some top tourist areas in the country for
Chinese President Xi Jinping and his European counterpart Dina Boluarte inaugurated the megaport of Chiang-Kai, a coastal town about 80 kilometers north of Lima. Majority owned by the Chinese shipping giant COSCO, the ultra-modern deepwater port creates a direct link between Peru and South America, and Shanghai and China. The first of the Chinese-built port in Chiang-Kai marks the beginning of a new era of faster trade at greater volume between not just Peru and China, but Latin America and Asia.
Chinese friends have been teaching us. From them, we've learned about automatization.
Loading and unloading containers. This fully automated port can be done with a joystick. This is the kind of technology that makes Chiang-Kai the most modern port in the region.
This first anniversary is very important to us because it marks a milestone. It greatly reduces transit times and any country can use it.
Deposit closed down about 0.5% on the day. Well, it was a down day for Europe as well. The FTSE in London down about 0.2%.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be covered.
Roughly the size of in the rainforest. Now, a new robot has been created to make the job faster as well as improve take-home pay. A key innovation as Brazil continues to host
Superfood acai has found its way into frozen treats, powdered supplements, and even specialty ever-increasing orders. Researchers say only
images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back, everyone. Weeks away from Christmas, one Chinese collectible is simply flying off the shelves for the holiday season. Of course, we're talking about Labubus, sold by Pop Mart, whose physical stores are bringing foot traffic back to some downtown shopping areas. Our Mark New has that story.
2 have recently opened in San Francisco, like this one at Stonestown Galleria Shopping Mall. The Ozus are showing around friends visiting from Turkey, and Pop Mart was an important stop.
This is the first Labubu for her.
He is crazy about Labubu. She is crazy about Labubu, but
we could just find the chance to come here.
Some shoppers think the Labubu craze is dropping off slightly, but they're still here buying other Pop Mart toys.
I'm kind of a collector, so I've always collected a little bit of everything, but I do think people are kind of moving a little bit on from the Labubu to kind of other Pop Mart stuff, but still within Pop Mart.
Retail experts say hard-to-get Labubu models are still fetching high prices in second-hand markets, and Pop Mart stores are still doing brisk business.
So it's gone really viral on TikTok. People post unboxing videos. It's, probably the most like sought after toy, if you want to call it a toy, like for the season this year.
San Francisco was slow to recover from the COVID pandemic. Stores and restaurants were left empty as many workers stayed home and worked remotely.
That's why it was welcome news in October when Pop Mart held a grand opening.
Out of Labubus, there's a line out the door. There's like a rabid following on social media, and when this is done, kind of like in whether it's strip malls or regular malls or whatever, everyone in that area is going to see the benefit of that because there's people posting that they will drive an hour or two to go get a Labubu.
Kerry says Labubu's blind box marketing concept has also caught on with other companies ranging.
We're seeing that right now with Pop Mart because I think it's important to make the distinction between a fad.
At least the next couple of years.
Yeah, Samantha, I think that creativity is really one of the things that's driving this Pop Mart trend, as you talked about.
They're going to go back and purchase more and more until they have the one that they desire or the full collection. So I think there's a really great staying powers with these.
I'm a huge toy fan, and I'm going to start following you here on Toy Insider. So give us an idea of what other toys are really driving sales and traffic, whether to Pop Mart stores or other stores and communities, especially as we head into the holidays.
Yeah, so outside of Mart, there are a ton of different toys that are really gaining traction or continuing to stay popular throughout this holiday season. On the blind box trend, you have different minis, right? So we have MJ Entertainment's Make It Mini.
Push of a button, the final penny is pressed at the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. In production since 1793, the penny is currently the smallest denomination of U.S. coin. In recent decades, pennies have been made of copper-covered zinc, and since 1909 have featured a portrait of President Abraham Lincoln.
It's emotional. 232 years of history. The penny's been struck for that many years at the Mint. And it was made up around 34% of our production for the last 15 years. So it's an emotional day. I think everybody's going to feel that.
More than 2 centuries ago, when the first penny appeared, you could buy a fair amount with the coin, but the steady march of inflation has diminished its value, and the little penny now costs almost
for the government to produce it. And honestly, once it's gone, nobody's ever going to miss it.
On its way out, some are now focusing on the future of the nickel. The U.S. Mint is studying the impact of potentially eliminating the 5-cent coin, which costs about 14 cents to manufacture. The high production cost, combined with the shift towards digital transactions,
Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you live from presentations and a formal protest. China has advised its citizens to refrain from visiting Japan for the time being, for students to carefully reconsider studying in Japan, citing security concerns. A China Coast Guard fleet patrolled the territorial waters of the Diaoyu Islands in the East China Sea, and live fire exercises are being conducted in the Yellow Sea this week.
Vow against China if they see something happens in the Taiwan Strait. So this is a very dangerous and unprecedented situation for the China-Japan relations, and it's understandable that China take a very strong position against Prime Minister Takanaki.
Well, it has to be said that, we had an extremely...
Given that, let's not forget, she's only come to office through internal party machinations and really needs to consolidate a position, particularly after there has been actually, frankly...
of bilateral diplomatic ties between the two countries were issued in September 1972, which says the government of Japan recognizes that the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China. The government of the People's Republic of China reiterates that Taiwan is an inalienable part of the territory of the People's Republic of China, and the government
of economic turmoil, especially with Donald Trump at the helm in the U.S. She doesn't have a real economic plan. If you start looking at it, it's avionics light. And as a percentage of their GDP, over 250%. It dwarfs the U.S., and it really brings into question how this go on.
Professor Liu Xiang, a lot of people are looking at the response from China and saying China is, reacting too strongly. They even used, the word wolf warrior to describe.
Consistent and persistent in building a relation with our neighboring country, including Japan. China has made a lot of efforts to boost the relations. So you see that immediately after Takanaki, the Prime Minister, our President Xi Jinping met her in Korea, in South Korea, in the ROK, and had seemingly it was a good meeting. But
rolled out more measures, uptick the tone of protests, and from your perspective, exactly what set off the Chinese so much?
It was the implied message that there is not one China as far as Japan's concerned, because if there was one China, then this is not a question of Chinese survival. It's the safety of Chinese people in Japan. Of Japan. And by all means, it's not the...
This is not the first time already in the past 3 weeks that China stepped up.
Yeah, he's keeping it vague, but then you had 80 years after we thought that this kind of fascism was dead. You see,
it's unprecedented, accepting that she made mistaken remarks.
If we look back at her behaviors and the remarks in the past, compares us to be very alert, keep alert in the current situation, and we have to watch close. When she says something about the survival threatening situation, I'm afraid he is making a self-fulfilling prophecy for Japan and the Japanese people. Her visit to the the shrine housing the Class A criminals is a symbol that she is the successor to that lingering ghost.
Warwick, it doesn't stop there. For instance,
These are clearly deeply held beliefs, right? I mean, you've just got to understand the political character that we're dealing with here. These aren't sort of conscious choices weighing up the pros and cons of, think her own mind. She is actually speaking in a way that aligns with the narratives of American proxies. It's not the first time we've seen this in recent years, This is actually the behaviour of proxies in other parts of the world that do the United States bidding, right, to test and push the boundaries, to at countries that they still put up with things like visits to the shrine, etc. Really just speaks to the fact that Japan itself, broadly speaking, through lack of leadership, has not come to terms with its war crimes. And, other countries that were involved in the Second World War have actually more constructively come to terms with their war crimes. The Japanese won't accept that they committed crimes, right? That they apologise, in one moment, in one breath, only to then go against it through actions in the other. Japan itself needs to come to terms with the role that it played in the first half of the 20th century and actually realise that if it is to be a constructive and respective...
When you put all of these together, it's pretty alarming.
Remilitarisation or nuclearisation of Japan is very dangerous, not only...
And the irresponsible remarks.
A stark reversal from U.S. President Donald Trump. He now says he backs the release of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In Bangladesh, a former prime minister and fugitive sentenced to death, Sheikh Hasina, found guilty in connection with a brutal crack, released all of the documents related to the investigation. CGTN's Walter Morris has more.
As pressure builds on Capitol Hill, U.S. President Donald Trump is changing his position on the Jeffrey Epstein files. On Sunday, Trump writing on social media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on from this. The president continued his attacks, calling the probe a Democratic hoax. But the social media post several prominent figures in American politics. He died in jail by suicide in 2019. Last week, Democrats in Congress secured a key number of signatures to force a vote on a bill to release the files. Some Republican lawmakers who were once considered the president's strongest allies in Congress breaking ranks and calling for the release of the files.
I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations, and I stand with survivors.
A re-election. President Trump and Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the president's most and vocal supporters, known for her divisive, confrontational rhetoric. Now she's painting herself as someone who can bring unity to the party, and that was Jeff Bloodworth. Turning now to were killed, protesters and victims' families.
Analysts now predict that their votes will go to Jose Antonio Cast, and Hara has an uphill struggle if she is to attract votes from beyond her base.
Main issues of the election, public security, immigration, and organized crime, all favor Cast.
It is not safe. They rob us. I want my country to return to how it was when I was young.
To President Daniel Noboa.
Holding 5 days of drills with Trinidad and Tobago forces, denounced by Maduro organization, claiming it's led by Maduro, though he denies this. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
At least 3 people were killed by Russian missile attacks in eastern Ukraine. 10 others were wounded. To improve a bit. To govern, the time promises has come and gone.
We absolutely cannot afford to waste time on tactical delays or stonewalling. The time for performative diplomacy has now passed. The time to roll up our sleeves, come together, and get the job done.
Representatives from vulnerable countries also stressed the importance of global commitments to cut those emissions and decrease climate-fueled hurricanes. They also called for rich nations to do more to help poor countries.
That poses serious risks of falling. But this remote-controlled marvel called Acai Bot is coming to the rescue. Unlike other worker replacing is a short 24 hours, and dock workers rush to send boatloads of to the several plants that have sprung up since the began. It produces 95% of Brazilian acai and is the world's leading exporter. But despite the ever-increasing orders, researchers say only about 10% of the rainforest acai is currently being harvested. And that is where Acai Bot can help.
É a vantagem de você ter o Acai Bot.
The advantage of the Acai Bot is the time savings, productivity, and safety it offers. It can harvest about 1 ton of acai in a single day.
Because of sometimes small but powerful.
Shuts out many. We at CGTN are committed to transcending the information gap and the digital divide. CGTN, bridging nations and civilizations. CGTN. See the difference.
President Abraham Lincoln.
It's emotional. 232 years of history. The penny's been struck for that many years at the Mint.
Responsible or necessary to meet the demands of the American public.
The Trump administration nickel could soon suffer the same fate as the penny. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
Across the Pacific Ocean are reduced by 1/3, and the port is providing local employment. More than half of the workers are from Takanaki and 20% are women, like remote control port operator Kelly Acuna.
I have been working here for a year, and those of us who are here are celebrating the port's anniversary. I have learned that I have never worked in a port before. This is the first port I have worked in, and our Chinese friends have been teaching us. From them, we've learned about automatization.
Loading and unloading containers is fully automated. Port can be done with a joystick. This is the kind of technology that makes Chiang Kai the most modern port in the region.
This first anniversary is very important to us because it marks a milestone. We can use us.
To and is the world today. Thank you for watching. I'm Asiye Namdar in Washington.
When the footsteps of dreams move in sync with the rhythm of the city, a new kind of power to achieve takes shape. In Kowloon worlds, Eastern and Western cultures converged. The fleeting shadows of metal wings sweeping over rooftops are now simply part of its storied past.
Goodbye, Kai Tai, and thank you.
Across time and space, in mere milliseconds, human limitations are shattered. In every contest, raw power bursts forth. Within inches, fence and fence collide. In an instant, a decisive strike secures victory. Which competitor will claim glory on the path to triumph?
We really hope that we can bring many more fans back to enjoy the immense experience that Kai Tai Sports Park brings, and certainly in the years ahead to really enjoy the great impact in Hong Kong.
Under Victoria Harbour's Symphony of Lights, witness unforgettable adrenaline-charged showdowns. Immerse yourself in the buzz of live performances. Create your own memories that will last a lifetime.
啟德體育園，香港新地標，大灣區
are still underrepresented, and data shuts out many. We at CGTN are committed to transcending the information gap and the digital divide. CGTN. Bridging nations and civilizations. CGTN. See the difference.
Hong Kong. The international city of Hong Kong is a global hub for finance, technology. Is a Hong Kong native. She majored in journalism at university before embarking on a career in television. In 20s, now she has set her sights on a much larger market.
區嘅人嘅歡迎啊，內地朋友都會買嚟做手信。尤其是大灣區啦，都係我去幫手咧。啊，好喎！
Chanting Man and Yo-Yo connected through their shared passion for entrepreneurship. When Yo-Yo shared her ideas, the two instantly clicked and decided to team.
依家新嘅系列啦，咁就睇緊啲外國嘅建築啦，同埋風景咧做靈感，去睇下設計啲相應嘅主題嘅系列咁樣咯。
Kong entrepreneur, Yo-Yo is also a part of the Greater Bay Area's growing development. She often shares her entrepreneurial journey with people, both to offer guidance and to expand her network.
佢講嘅一啲好有用嘅意見啦，係為我哋將來日後創業都會提供到好好嘅支援嘅。
我覺得俾到一啲關於版權方面嘅一啲資訊俾我啦，咁啊令到我有信心咧，就係
change supportive policies for young entrepreneurs, from subsidies to comprehensive support services. With such a vast, dynamic market, it's the right time and place. Wu Kelvin Xiaofan was born into a family of food professionals and has an encyclopedic knowledge of beef. In 1989, after studying in Australia, he came to Hong Kong at the invitation of the Vocational Training Council and began a career in education. He pioneered the city's first maximizing flavor is a key responsibility of the head chef.
嗱，呢個阿 Queenie 係嚟自廣州嘅。
哦 ，Queenie 你好 ，Hello Hello， 點解你喺廣州嚟到呢一度學廚藝咧？
係同仔鬼嘅，咁就想過嚟學多啲嘢，因為其實廣州就少啲呢啲機會。
我見到啲學生應該嚟自唔同嘅國家。
係啊，我哋呢啲課程咧都係國際化嘅。OK， 咁樣啦。試下都震埋呢邊真係好大細咧去調整。
There's an urgent need to establish local standards tailored to Chinese culinary practices. The purpose of vocational training is not only to build a talent pool, but also to raise professional standards and develop a domestic system.
咁其實呢啲學生咪畢咗業之後都大部分順理成章都係會做廚師嘅。
絕對係。咁佢哋一開始入嚟咧揀呢啲課程咧，咁我哋都希望佢係真係有好有誠意，係真正佢哋個目標咁樣去讀，咁佢哋先會俾投入啲精力啊，好中意咁去學啦。
其實可能喺畢業之後幫佢哋可能一啲就業機會啊，俾一啲可能意見佢哋咁樣。會嘅，絕對會。我哋投入咗咁多精力教一個好似你個仔女咁樣，咁佢哋出嚟做嘢咧，你都想佢有個好嘅結果啦，有一條好嘅出路啦。
Students at the culinary school come from all over. Today, Wu Kelvin Xiaofan's former students can be found working in every corner of the food industry, in hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, and processing plants.
原際如佢同你見面受你嘅教育，你可以自己啲技能傳授俾佢，令到佢係揾到一份佢合適嘅工作。我結識到一班年輕嘅朋友，係非常之好一種回報，係福分。
As collaboration with the Greater Bay Area becomes more frequent, the Hong Kong Vocational Training Council continues to offer a wide range of learning opportunities for young people, equipping them with professional skills and guiding them towards successful careers.
呢一集咧，我特別覺得有親切感啊，因為香港係自己屋企啦，我亦都感受到深深處的愛。
Latest market-moving headlines from around the world.
Welcome to the world today on CTTN. Voices telling their stories. Rediscovering China. CGTN.
The Trump administration tariffs, how much impact are they having on?
Would be in serious trouble, and we've taken in tremendous amounts of money.
However, President Trump is under increasing pressure over rising prices, and last week he rolled back tariffs on a broad range of food imports, including coffee, bananas and beef. For more perspective on how all of this is impacting the global economy, joining me now from Oregon is Yang Liang. She is chair professor in economics at Willamette University. Also with us from New York is Anthony Chan. He is a former chief economist at JP Morgan Chase & Company. Joining the discussion is Ottaviano Canullo. He is senior at the Policy Center for the New South, and he's a former vice president of the World Bank. And with me right here in the studio is Saurabh Gupta. He is senior Asia-Pacific policy specialist at the Institute for China.
But the article that I wrote on Substack basically does find that those tariffs did have an impact on overall inflation. In fact, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. It is the only reason why we didn't see inflation much higher is because there were other offsetting factors like China
has been diversifying its trading partners. So even though the exports to the United States has fallen by 18% so far this year, its exports to ASEAN countries have gone up by 14%, to African countries have gone up by a quarter, and also boosting its domestic demand. That would again help to sustain the kinds of economic growth at home.
So is that if one looks at the deals that the administration has had with the Southeast Asian countries, and it has had deals with about 4 of them, it has full deals with Malaysia and Cambodia, very detailed ones, and I'm surprised if there is significant forward movement in that negotiation also with India, considering that the administration has made a fair degree of progress with other Southeast Asian countries, and their trade structures are not very different from India.
Right. Okay, let's get back to Anthony. I'm glad to say that he's now back with us. Anthony, I was wanting to get your opinion on something that Yang Liang was talking about.
The tariffs on coffee, but we didn't reduce it entirely for Brazil. Brazil is still going to have a 40% tariff.
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here again. We have to keep in sight the different layers of tariffs that Mr. Trump has applied. There are the sector-specific tariffs on steel and this and that. There are the typical tariffs that he announced in April 2nd, right, encompassing a minimum 10% to those countries with which the U.S. has a trade surplus, and a series of higher tariffs depending on the size of the country's surplus with the U.S. And then there's a third layer of extraordinary tariffs, like it was the case with India, alleging the purchase of oil from Russia, Switzerland, and Brazil. Mr. Trump's move to retreat, regret, with respect to tariffs of foods, particularly stuff that is not duly produced in the U.S., impacted the reciprocal tariff component. So Brazil had earth. There is also an interest by the U.S. in reducing the tariffs on the U.S. ethanol and so on. But this part, this 40%, is still under negotiation. But see, we mentioned Brazil, but there is something broad in place with respect to the region as a whole, and we should pay attention. Everyone should pay attention. The flurry of agreements, investment agreements that President Trump announced on Thursday of last week, encompassing particularly Guatemala, Argentina, Ecuador, and El Salvador, because these are specific measures provided for these countries that are considered in this regard friendly to Mr. Trump, right? And those that previous treatment to these countries will bring consequence to the others. Nicaragua at this moment is probably very much concerned, as well as Brazil might be concerned with the fact that Argentina, that competes with Brazil in some segments of those, will have a
When it comes to the auto sector, Japan actually has investments and so on and so forth. They actually got a relatively low, sort of tariff rate of 15%. But then I think that, in a way, boosts China's exports in those automobiles, especially new energy vehicles. And with that, the supply chain, Japan is in a precarious position, and especially the flare up of tension.
Negotiations with when they're on, when they come back on, is what's in the best interests of Canada. Not emotional, what's in the best interests of Canada. They will only agree, the Americans will only agree.
First of all, on the agricultural front, there's very little space for Mr. Modi to make compromises. India has very high ag tariffs, etc., and it's kind of become dependent on those tariffs in many ways. And of course, this impacts huge amount of livelihoods. I mean, small farmers, holders, etc. He does not have space on agriculture to make significant compromises. And if you do look at, say, the agreements with, again, coming back to the Southeast Asians and all, they are not liberalizing the ag markets fully either. And actually, even the Koreans and the Jap billion, the Indians will have to pony up some money. I mean, it's a poor...
Trump to establish the tariffs as he did. But the fact of the matter is that clearly, according to the U.S. law, is not up to the executive to define taxes and so on. But the outcome of the... But at the same time, WTO counted many other trade liberalization measures, trade facilitation measures, and so on. So this is important to realize that the rest of the world, not only, basically, mostly, did not retaliate.
Again, according to a very recent research report by the San Francisco Fed, when they looked at back in the 90s, you have trade barriers. This does, create supply chain disruptions, affected supply side, and it also reduces demand at the same time. So I think the impact could be stagflation, right? That you have inflation on the one hand, also slower growth on the other. So that is not conducive, I think, to global prosperity. And
so, very quickly, I got 30 seconds. There must be domestic political pressure on President Trump right now with these tariffs and what's going on. The Republicans...
You might think you are better informed in an information age. The fact is, people are more often misled by misinformation. You might think every voice is heard in a digital world. The fact is, many nations...
security responsibilities inside the enclave and a quote possible pathway for Palestinian self-determination. Let's bring in Mitch McCann in New York. Mitch, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, well, good evening. I think this could be described as a diplomatic win for the United States and Donald Trump. It gives the next phase of its 20-point peace plan in Gaza both legitimacy from the international community and a UN-backed legal mandate moving forward. Now, that is critical because that legal mandate from the UN is something that America's allies repeatedly wanted before signing on to that stabilization force aspect of this agreement. Now, the resolution authorizes the establishment of what's been described as a board of peace. This is a transitional governing body that's going to be led by Donald Trump, as well as an international stabilization force that I mentioned, which will secure the borders of Gaza and demilitarize the enclave. Now, while that aspect has been approved tonight, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to disarm Hamas. Before the vote at the UN, the US ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, told the Council to vote against the resolution would be a vote to return to war. After the vote, he thanked the Council and discussed more about the so-called Board of Peace. Now, a few moments ago, we heard from China's ambassador to the United Nations, Fitu. Here's what he had to say just a few moments ago here at the UN.
The draft resolution is very clear on many critical elements. The pen holder requests the Council to authorize the establishment of a Board of Peace and International Stabilization Force, which will play a key role in the post-war governance in Gaza. It should
abstaining from them over the next 2 years. I think that's the key question moving forward. So while this is a victory for the United States, one or two big looming questions in terms of the implementation moving forward here.
All right, Mitch McCann, really appreciate the update.
Probe a Democratic hoax, but the social media post marks a dramatic departure from previous messaging cranks and for the release of the files.
I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations, and I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that. I believe the country deserves transparency in these files.
Several Epstein survivors are also urging lawmakers to release the files. In a new public service announcement released over the weekend, several women are seen holding photos of themselves as teenagers when they met the alleged sex trafficker and asking Americans to contact representatives in Congress to demand the release of Walter Morris, CGTN, Washington.
To Bangladesh now, where the ousted Prime Minister Hasina has been sentenced to death. A special tribunal found her guilty of crimes against humanity in connection to last year's mass uprisings by student protesters. Hasina accused of inciting and ordering a violent crackdown that killed hundreds of people. Protesters and victims' families in Dhaka welcomed the sentence. The 8-year-old Hasina, who fled to India last year, says the court's decision is politically motivated. The UN human rights body hailed the moment as important for victims, but added it opposes the death penalty.
As expected, Janet Jara secured the vote of the left wing in Chile, but her margin of victory was much narrower than polls had suggested. With so many candidates vying for position on the right, analysts now predict that their votes will go to José Antonio Cast, and Jara has an uphill struggle if she is to attract votes beyond her base.
The main issues of the election, public security, immigration and organised crime, all favour Cast.
It is not safe. They rob us. I want my country to return to how it was when I
took a combined share of more than 70% of the vote on Sunday. Cast
Another boat of alleged drug smugglers, this one in the Eastern Pacific, and US Marines have begun military drills off the coast of Venezuela. Owen Fairclough.
Though he denies this. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Still ahead, the pressure is...
World go round. Global business.
The statement made by Takanaki is erroneous. And she referred back to 4 documents that laid a foundation on such issues, such as the China-Japan joint provisions.
Plans, they're aimed at reducing refugees. Zelensky is in France seeking more military support. He's agreed to buy up to 100 warplanes, drones and air defence systems from France over the next 10 years. Zelensky called the deal historic. He signed the document with French President at a joint news conference. A warning on the final week of COP30 in Brazil. Environmental groups say government promises are falling short in halting the rapid destruction of the world's largest rainforests. A recent report showed last year the planet lost 8.1 million. Vulnerable nations also stressed the importance of global commitments to shut emissions and decrease climate-fueled hurricanes. They also called for rich nations to do more to help poor countries with financing. For generations, acai berries have been hand-picked deep in the Amazon rainforest. Now, technology is making the job faster and easier while improving the take-home pack.
At the same time, by 2029, according to the latest Research and Markets report, that will be possible in part because of sometimes small but powerful innovations. Franco, CGTN, Belém, Pará.
Coming up, another milestone for China's first homegrown passenger jet, plus checking in on Peru's megaport built with help from China 1 year after its inauguration.
Whether it's about education, the home you live in,
more than half of the workers are from Chiang-Kai and 20% are women, like remote control port operator Kelly Acuna.
Hub in the South American region.
Foomu says that the port's flagship. At the same time, Peru's top agri-exports, blueberries, grapes and avocados, are reaching supermarket shelves in Shanghai and the rest of China. Dan Collins, CGTN, Chiang-Kai, Peru.
And finally, to the Dubai Air Show. This year, it's bringing together more than 1,500 exhibitors and hundreds of aircraft.
Japanese tourism stocks plunge after China issues a travel warning. I'm Sean Cables in Washington, D.C. Also coming up in this full hour of Global Business.
Year, according to TSA data, experts say passengers should still check airline apps for delays or cancellations, but for more typical reasons.
I think the things we should look for are weather-related that could kind of throw the system out of whack or outages, but overall, I think things are looking good.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Government data reports are one more thing Americans can expect. Down's economic impact on the United States, as well as the labor market. We're joined by Nicholas Economides on what to do with the interest rate, or in terms of jobless figures, trying to control inflation. And you're saying you don't think it's going to have a big impact?
I don't want to have a big impact in the sense that the Fed has all kinds of ways to find this data on its own. It doesn't have to rely 100% on official statistics. And there are representatives of the various banks, regional banks around the country, who make their own surveys and independent of the government. And the Fed should have information. I think the real problem there is for the whole period that Powell has been chairman, there have been delays in the implementation of policy by the Federal Reserve.
Well, that sounds like it's coming straight from the Trump administration rather than information coming out that they...
And on the other hand, they're not so sure about the labor market.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, did the shutdown meaningfully disrupt hiring plans for the fourth quarter? Because it is a very important time, especially for retail. Move forward, people are going to be looking to see which report is...
Each day, there are millions of stories.
Avoid visiting Japan in the near term. Air China, China Southern Airlines, China Eastern Airlines, and other companies made their announcements in separate statements. Well, at the same time, many Chinese netizens have already shown their refund record for Japan travel tickets. And the flights from the Chinese mainland to Japan have been declining in recent weeks. Data gathered by Chinese industry information provider Yumitrip.
Pressure on bilateral trade because Japan's tourism industry relies heavily on Chinese visitors spending shopping, catering, and accommodation. The local economies of some top tourist areas in the country, for example, regions like Hokkaido, Osaka, Okinawa, and Kyushu, are likely to be affected.
At the same time, China's Ministry of Culture and Tourism advised citizens to avoid travel, citing security concerns. And the country's Ministry of Education also issued a study abroad alert urging citizens to exercise caution when planning to study in the country.
China's only tropical island province draws some 97 million tourists every year.
First time in Hainan, and when I come back, I'd love to experience this again.
Beyond offering the unique experience of traditional Chinese medicine, the zone's real advantage lies in its access to high-end equipment and advanced treatments. As part of the free trade port development, Hainan permits the early use of cutting-edge international medicines and medical services within this pilot zone.
Take this nuclear medicine scanner behind me, for example. It's more advanced and precise than what many hospitals in Southeast Asia have. It can detect issues much earlier, allowing earlier intervention. That's a big draw for visitors from Indonesia.
While many medical tourism destinations need at least 3 days to deliver results, here reports arrive on the same day, and they are issued in English, which is recognized internationally.
From this destination.
For Wilson, direct flights make all the difference. The Jakarta-Sanya route cuts travel time to just 4.5 hours.
Prepares to launch its special hotel groups, tourist operators, and
Welcome back. Taking a look at housing in the United States. U.S. President Trump is proposing 50-year mortgages to tackle housing affordability. The upside, lower monthly payments, could help people who are priced out of the market. The downside, homeowners are going to be paying nearly double the interest and build equity.
In Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about the price of housing in the United States and the pressure that it is putting on the U.S. economy and how difficult it is now for home buyers to actually make a move into the market. Now, a new record, the first-time home buyer age is 40. A couple of years ago, it was just 35 years old. Also, home prices spiking significantly. For more on housing and affordability in the United States and the state of the market as a whole, we're joined by M. Wachter. She is a professor.
A lot of complexities.
Well, talk about those complexities, because one of which is there's a
riskier instrument because borrowers can't accumulate equity in their home, which makes them
or make it worse. Because if you think back to 2006 and 7 and 8, there was this allegation that realtors and others went after those people who dearly want
potential use in a small portion of the market.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. It was some prime mortgage operators, not realtors. So I definitely want to stand corrected. And banks would certainly benefit, and people would pay a fortune in interest. But there are people out there who would support such an idea because they want to have house ownership. Lawmakers in his own party to vote to release more files related to the case. This comes as a growing number of lawmakers are throwing their support behind a bill that would force the U.S. Justice Department to release all of the files related to the investigation. Morris has the story.
As pressure builds on Capitol Hill, U.S. President Donald Trump is changing his position on the Jeffrey Epstein files. On Sunday, Trump writing on social media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein file because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on. The president continued his attacks, calling the probe a Democratic hoax. But the social media post marks a dramatic departure from previous messaging coming from the White House.
We have nothing to do with Epstein. The Democrats do. All of his...
And I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that.
Why and how the justice system was corrupted by wealth and power.
The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to take up the issue this week, and if it advances, it will move to the Senate. Walter Morris, CGTN, Washington.
Program week 2 of key UN climate talks in Brazil. We're going to take you to COP30 in the Amazonian rainforest.
It's easy to lose orientation. When storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
In Brazil, environmental groups telling attendees that government promises are falling short in halting the rapid destruction of the world's largest forest. A report showing the planet lost 8.1 million hectares of forest back in 2024. Now that is an area roughly the size of England. U.S. officials say, or rather UN officials say, the time for promises is over.
We absolutely cannot afford to waste time on tactical delays or stonewalling. The time for performative diplomacy has now passed. Now's the time to roll up our sleeves, come together, and get the job done.
Representatives from vulnerable nations also lining up to stress the importance that countries cut emissions to avoid ferocious climate-fueled hurricanes. And there were calls for more wealthy nations to do more to help the poorer countries deal with ongoing climate change. Now, for generations, acai berries have been handpicked in the Amazon rainforest. Now, a new robot has been created to make that job faster and easier, as well as improve take-home pay. A key innovation as Brazil continues to host COP30 this week. Lucrecia Franco has the story.
Bots can help. The advantage of the acai bot is the time savings, productivity, and safety it offers. It can harvest about 1 ton of acai. The market is projected to surpass $3 billion by 2029, according to the latest Research and Markets report. That will be possible in part because of sometimes small but powerful innovations. Lucrecia Franco, CGTN, in Pará.
A groundbreaking new CO2 recycling system aimed at reducing our carbon footprint has been installed in Vienna, and it is helping a local farmer fertilize tomatoes. Johannes Flesch has that story.
Vienna greenhouse operator Martin Merschel replaced his natural gas heater with an innovative biomass system.
We burn the wood chips, we use the heat.
12 tons of pure CO2 each day that is piped into the greenhouse. The tomato plants absorb most of the CO2 gas, which is then, however, released into the atmosphere when the tomatoes are eaten and digested. Despite the limited environmental effect, this project shows how carbon capture technologies are further advancing.
The innovative part of capturing
Iran is on high alert after a startling warning about water shortages from Iranian's president. The crisis could lead to an unprecedented evacuation of residents. Ehsan Kavani has that story.
The warning.
To build water resilience, we should focus on achieving.
Okay, still to come in our program, the Chinese doll that is simply flying off the shelves ahead of holidays. We'll have that story.
Watching breaking news on CGTN.
Just weeks away from Christmas, one Chinese collectible is flying off the shelves for the holiday season. And you may have already guessed.
But still within pop.
But retail hard-to-get Labubu models are still fetching high prices in second-hand markets, and Pop Mart stores are still doing brisk business.
So it's gone really viral on TikTok. People post unboxing videos. It's, probably the most like sought-after toy, if you want to call it a toy, like for the season this year.
San Francisco was slow to recover from the COVID pandemic. Stores and restaurants were left empty as many workers stayed home and worked remotely. That's why it was welcome news in October when Pop Mart held a grand opening for its second
to downtown, which we need on Powell Street. So many shops have closed, so it's nice to see this driving traffic back here.
Some store posts that they have Labubus, there's out the door. So there's like a rabid following on social. When this is done, kind of like in whether it's strip malls or regular malls or whatever, everyone in that area is going to see the benefit of that. Because there's people posting that they will drive an hour or two to go get a Labubu.
Carrie says Labubu's blind box marketing concept has also caught on with other companies, ranging from Nike to Sephora to Lego. It's still providing excitement for new customers too. Say that the idea of you don't know what you get until you open it does exceedingly well at getting you to come back for more. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
Thing that would pop up and breathe life into a neighborhood. Are we seeing that right now with Pop Mart? Because I think it's important to make the distinction between a fad and a trend. Will these Pop Marts still be around in a matter of months?
Yeah,
So I definitely think Pop Mart opening a brick and mortar store in any location suggests that that area will see a spike in sales, maybe a spike in economic prosperity. The thing about Pop Mart is so many different items that are created by singular artists and have so much, again, artistry poured into them that even if the Labubus are not sought after in the future, they have other items that are really grabbing people's attention, especially because of the blind box experience. So I definitely think that where these brick and mortar stores are located, they'll see a lot of sales, a lot of people coming from far away, from down the street for, at least the next couple of years.
Yeah, Samantha, I think that creativity is really one of the things that's driving this Pop Mart trend, as you talked about.
Because as people continue to take their Labubus out, maybe they got one that they didn't necessarily want, but they want to continue building the collection. So they're going to go back and purchase more and more until they have the last thing that parents or consumers are going to give up when they're
saying this. Is there a chance this craze is dying down, or do you think it's really going to have legs going through the
payments? Make it mini verse, and these are little capsules that box you open. Again, it's a blind box experience, and you can build your own foods, mini products, and it's really gaining traction again on TikTok as well. So I think that anything that has that unboxing experience that adds to the play pattern, it adds to the level of happiness that kids and adults even are going to see as they unbox that this holiday season. I think we're going to see that, drive the consumers to the store or to the online shops.
Good stuff from Samantha Canal there. Well, more business headlines coming your way, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right here on CGTN.
Making sense of the overwhelming wave of information means cutting through the noise.
National Stabilization Force in Gaza. It passed with 13 votes in favor, while China and Russia abstaining on the vote. And finally, the U.S. Mint has made its...
And President Trump no longer believe the continued production of the penny-cent
coin, which costs about 14 cents to manufacture. The high production cost, combined with the shift towards digital transactions, means the nickel could soon suffer the same fate as the penny. Jim Spellman, CGTN.
The UN Security Council approves a U.S. proposed plan to send international forces to Gaza while China abstains from the stark reversal from U.S. President Donald Trump. He now says he backs the release of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And the result from key elections in South America, leftist candidate details.
Yeah, well, good evening. I think this could be described as a diplomatic win for the United States and Donald Trump. It gives the of its 20-point peace plan in Gaza both legitimacy from the international community and a UN-backed legal mandate moving forward. Now, that is critical because that legal mandate from the UN is something that America's allies reportedly wanted before signing on to that international stabilization force aspect of this agreement. Now, the resolution authorizes the establishment of what's been described as a board of peace. This is a transitional governing body that's going to be led by Donald Trump, as well as an international stabilization force that I mentioned, which will secure the borders of Gaza and demilitarize the enclave. Now, while that aspect has been approved tonight, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to...
In Gaza, it should have explained in detail their structure, composition, terms of reference, and criteria of preparation, among others. This should have been an essential basis for Council's serious discussion.
Turns it into a party to the conflict in favor of the occupation. So Hamas...
allies in Congress breaking ranks and calling for the release of the files.
I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations. And I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that. I believe the country deserves transparency in these files.
Several Epstein survivors are also urging lawmakers to release the files. In a new public service announcement released over the weekend, several women are seen holding photos of themselves as teenagers when they met the alleged sex trafficker. And America
was corrupted by wealth and power.
The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to take up the issue this week, and if it advances, it will move on to the Senate. Walter Morris, CGTN, Washington.
Turning to Bangladesh, where the ousted Prime Minister...
Chileans cast their ballots on Sunday in a mandatory general election, with two starkly contrasting candidates progressing to a runoff next month. Janet Jara won cast, and Jara has an uphill struggle if she is to attract votes from beyond her. We will find out on December 14th which of the two contrasting visions for the country's future prevail. John Bartlett, CGTN, Santiago, Chile.
Voters in Ecuador have rejected a measure that would have allowed foreign military bases back in the country. The result, this one in the Eastern Pacific. And U.S. Marines have begun military drills off the coast of Venezuela. Owen Fairclough has details.
They will do it from Monday to Thursday, while the people of Trinidad and Tobago will see whether they continue to tolerate the use of their waters and land to seriously threaten peace in the Caribbean.
The region has quickly become a geopolitical flashpoint with the Trump administration.
The pressure is on as COP30 climate talks enter.
There are millions of
Senji Yuen has details.
Mounting said this afternoon that the statement made by Takanaki is erroneous. Commitment on Taiwan question should be upheld and honored. Also, the spokeswoman said that China or Japanese side
reviewed every 30 months. Some could be sent back when conditions improve in their home countries, Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in France seeking more military support. He's agreed to buy up to 100 warplanes, drones, and air defense systems from France. Next 10 years, Zelensky called the deal historic. He signed the document with French President Emmanuel Macron at a joint news conference. A warning on the final week of COP30 in Brazil. Environmental groups say government promises are falling short in halting the rapid destruction of the world's largest take-home pay. And as Lucretia Franco reports, that's changing how one of the region's most recognized fruits is harvested.
Strapping on a palm leaf harness, then climbing. This one, where sturdy crunchies and purple smiles are all part of the experience. Demand for acai skyrocketed both inside and outside Brazil in recent years.
Collected, processed and sold elsewhere.
Franco, CGTN, Belém, Pará.
The storms come. We have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world's currencies are
Peru's newest port is celebrating its first anniversary. The China-built megaport is considered an important gateway on Latin America's Pacific coast. Dan Collins reports.
It's been 1 year since Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Peruvian counterpart Dina Boluarte from Chancay, and 20% are women.
Like been doing over the past year has consolidated our plan to become the most important hub in the South American region.
Foomu says that the port's flagship route is to and from Shanghai, but it is also an important regional hub.
We are acting as an intermediary between trade with Chile, Argentina and Brazil. That's why, as a Latin American hub for all Latin American countries,
it's considered the biggest event of its kind in the region. Also on display, the latest innovations in aerospace technologies and advanced... Chinese Premier Li Chong is in Moscow. He's leading China's delegation for this year's summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. CGTN's Dasha Chernyshova has more.
Oh, this is a very important gathering where we understand the sides will be talking primarily about diplomacy and trade. The focus is obviously ensuring economic ties. So this meeting in Moscow is expected to summon that. A number of agreements is expected to be signed as part of that. There will be some documents signed as a result, but obviously the key idea here is that this should be provided another platform. And separately on the sidelines, the Russian capital is hosting the saying that.
And she also talked about the treaty signed in 1978, the China-Japan Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which reaffirmed the principles stated in the 1992 document that I mentioned previously. And also the China-Japan Joint Declaration signed in 1998, which focused on building a partnership of friendship and cooperation for peace and development, another joint statement on Taiwan question. And also, regardless of which political party or individual of Mounting said that the Japanese government's commitment on Taiwan question should be upheld and honored. Also, the spokeswoman said that China urged Japanese side to act responsible toward history.
Affected by all this.
A number of Chinese % fewer than 5 weeks earlier.
The major consideration for Chinese.
At the same time, China's Ministry of
Los Angeles. The event is co-organized by the National Committee on United States-China Relations and Tsinghua University Center for International Security and Strategy. This year's theme, Bridging the Cultural and Information Divide. Our correspondent, Tianzi, is in Los Angeles.
Now in its third edition, the United States-China People-to-People Dialogue is quickly establishing itself as a significant platform for bilateral engagement, field visits and exchanges with international students.
This year we've changed what we're doing. Rather than just have pairings of people in similar industries talking to China.
What I wasn't expecting to see is that now
the trade at greater volume between not just Peru and China, but Latin America and Asia. With the new hub, transit times across the Pacific Ocean are reduced by 1/3, and the port is providing local employment. More than half of the workers are from Shanghai and 20% are women, like remote control
in the South American region.
Foomu says that the port's ship route is to and from Shanghai, but it is also an important regional hub.
We are acting as an intermediary between trade with Chile, Argentina and Brazil.
Dan Collins, CGTN, Shanghai.
Underrepresented. And data poverty shuts out many. We at CGTN are committed to transcending the information.
Is bringing lots of new international visitors to China, especially into Hainan province. Some come for the sparkling beaches, others for the tropical rainforest, and still others come to be healed. CGTN's Wang Hongjia reports on the island.
Trend is emerging.
Take this nuclear medicine scanner behind me, for example. It's more advanced and precise than what many hospitals in Southeast Asia have. It can detect issues much earlier, allowing earlier intervention and treatment. That's a big draw for visitors from Indonesia.
While many medical tourism destinations need at least 3 days to deliver results, here reports arrive on the same day, and they are issued in English, which is recognized internationally. Far away in Indonesia, travel agencies have seized and a third country without returning to their home base, a policy known as the seventh freedom of air.
International flights are taking off and landing every day. Yet what unfolds here goes beyond rising tourist numbers. It's a launchpad for a burgeoning global service trade. As the island prepares to launch customs operation, foreign travel agencies, hotel cruise operators and airlines can all tap into this gateway. Hainan is opening to the world, turning boundaries into benefits. Wang Hongjia, CGTN in Sanya, Hainan Province.
China's 15th National Games are shaping the economy of the Greater Bay Area.
Harbor and the Eye of the Greater Bay Area. As Guangdong is one of the host city of the Games, we're very proud and well.
Harbor.
And we are thrilled to be one of the main businesses benefiting from this surge. Third year.
On the Taiwan question made in the 4 political documents between China and Japan represent solemn commitments by the Japanese government with legal effect under international law. There is no room for ambiguity or misinterpretation. Regardless of which party or individual governs Japan, it must
issues. She also expressed China's
across neighboring countries and regions. If Japan's domestic policy shifts in this direction, its foreign policy may follow, reviving offensive military capabilities and raising serious concerns about regional stability, maritime security, and global trade.
It is that incendiary element within that relationship which can literally burn the relationship between the two countries down and cause tremendous damage, just not to themselves but to the region. And of course, at the end of the day, it will be the Taiwanese who will be hurt the most in the process. And so it's very important that Japan tamp down on militarism, that it recognize the horrors of the past, that it stand by its political statements that its prime ministers have made with regard to history and recognizing the harm and hurt of history, abide by its diplomatic obligations with regard to recognizing Taiwan effectively as a part of China and honoring that obligation.
Well, actually, I was very surprised when I heard one estimate projects a potential loss of 0.36% of Japan's GDP. Chinese carriers operate about 80% of all flights between the two countries, and traffic has already been declining since mid-October, sliding to just 80 to 90% of pre-pandemic levels in 2019. Despite the downturn, Chinese mainland travelers remain crucial. They were Japan's second largest tourist market in 2024, accounting for nearly 7 million of its 37 million overseas visitors and spending
strain, so it in a calm and moderate manner.
We spoke to Benoit Hardy-Chachuan, a lecturer of political science and international affairs at Temple University, Japan. He says the Prime Minister's recent remarks on Taiwan mark a sharp break from the cautious approach of her predecessors and that this shift risks escalating instability in relations with China.
I would say that what was surprising about Prime Minister Takaichi's statements on Taiwan is that primarily she has broken with past practice of Japanese prime ministers. Japanese prime ministers have always been very cautious about how they dealt with Taiwan, the foreign policy for the next couple of years. Primarily, I think the main consequence would be possibly increased instability, their security role in the region. Also, in order to better face what they feel are challenges to their national security. So this is really the main risk of Takaichi's policy for the next few years. A decline in relations with China, which could lead to many problems in the region when it comes to trade. It could mean issues in terms of security also in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. So the consequences could be numerous.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation.
And for Chinese enterprises investing in Russia of the SCO. The UN Security Council has approved a U.S. draft resolution backing President Donald Trump.
All our clothes and bedding were soaked, and we ended up sleeping in the water.
Many families spent protected from the wind and heavy rain.
All of our bedding was soaked, and my child was drenched and shivering along with the rest of my kids. I couldn't stop the water, and the tent collapsed on us. We couldn't do anything and spent the night on the street.
The community lacked the equipment needed to protect against flooding, such as tools to remove human waste and prevent rainwater from entering the tents. Faced with a long winter that threatened more than 1 million people living in shelters across Gaza without protection from the elements. It is clear that the winter season brings severe challenges for families who lost their homes and struggle with limited resources amid ongoing Israeli restrictions on border crossings and no political prospects for reconstruction in the near future. Nadir Al-Tibi, CGTN, Gaza City.
At least 49 people have died at a mining site in southeastern Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Miners who work with the rudimentary tools, they do not have protective gear, and they work under very difficult circumstances. So these accidents are very common in the DRC. But the government says they have deployed soldiers and are working with the local authorities to streamline this industry. Just last week, a government agency known as the Entreprise Générale du Cobalt said that they had launched the production of 1,000 tons of traceable cobalt. So basically, they're trying to formalize this industry, which has very many people who are working in very harsh conditions. There are a lot of middlemen who have been exposed. These are poor people who are trying to eke out a living in these mines because the DRC is very rich in copper, and which is used to make cobalt.
A court in
We're open innovation and share.
It is gearing up for the launch of its island-wide special customs operations next month. The new system is built on the principle of freer access at the first line, regulated access at the second line, and free flow within the island, creating a more favorable trade environment. Core include zero tariff policies for goods, streamlined trade management, and more efficient oversight. The island in southwestern China's duty-free shopping policy is also being upgraded. The number of eligible product categories, green energy, cutting-edge technology, and modern services. The Shanghai-Taiwan Golden Autumn Concert has concluded at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music. The annual event attracted several hundred musical enthusiasts from across the Taiwan Strait. Zhou Yixin has more.
The performance of the 2025 Shanghai-Taiwan Golden with Power Ode to the Yellow River to My Chinese Heart. Dozens of musical artists from both
of Galden Japanling Monastery left Xizang at the age of 7. More than 50 years later, he decided to return to his spiritual homeland. CGTN Sun Ziyuan met with him in Lhasa to learn about actions on.
He was only 7 at that time.
When I arrived in India, I wanted to come back, but I couldn't decide my fate. They also place great importance on the transportation and daily lives of farmers and herders. With that, many subsidies have been introduced. These policies have greatly improved people's living standards in many.
Took a condor's journey from a young reincarnated living Buddha through exile to a heartfelt return, embodies the enduring spirit of Xizang.
Of the member states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is being held in Moscow this week. SCO's role extends far beyond diplomacy. It is a crucial platform for ensuring regional security and stability as well as development. Furthermore, it drives economic integration and infrastructure connectivity, creating tangible benefits for its member states and the people.
Infrastructure integration, not regional, but international organization. it has several institutions, but not enough institutions. So in 10 they added important parts of this, of realizing this idea.
Yeah. Elena, we noticed that the SCO Council meeting is
the institutional dimension, about general, traditional set of the security. I would say they're addressing the non-traditional security like climate change, water scarcity, public health, and cybersecurity would be one of the SCO opportunity in the years ahead. Would make organization distinct, because somehow I have an impression that many international organizations are going around the circles, and
principles of this GGI is actions. For example, about the establishment of SCO Bank. For
the role of SCO on the field of global governance. That's exactly the reason why Chinese initiative, the global governance initiative, comes into play. And you look at the action plans, you look at the Chinese side in particular, came up with the proposed 6 sort of centers, and also on the question of security, as our Russian colleagues mentioned. So in all, I think, and last but not least, the institutional reforms also very much important in terms of strengthening or incorporating the different layers or type of groups. So now we have 10 full groups, members, and dialogue partners, and also and others. Now we have good experience. First and foremost, the AIIB, which has proved very successful so far, and also the BRICS development banks are very much successful in a way that in addressing or learning, which I think SCO Bank, Development Bank, and Development Bank is going to be bigger, which means maybe need more.
Since 2024, the alliance of currency transactions to encourage local currencies like China.
Expand local currency trade platforms and articulate a regional industrialization vision that empowers Central Asian countries, for example, to escape the post-Soviet raw material trap on the global level.
Quad, you mentioned a very important point. That is, it's not just the security posturing. It is much more about pragmatic cooperation. When it comes to pragmatism, we have noticed the Central Asian countries has been quite busy over the past few weeks dealing with, Washington, and also, at the same time, some different capitals are working with Moscow.
First of all, Kazakhstan, where I'm from, or other Central Asian countries, they follow what we call the multi-vector foreign policy, which means that given our geopolitical position, geography, neighboring with the second largest economy, on the one hand, on the other hand, with another great neighbor such as Russia, we need to diversify, our, political. Visited Washington and met with President Trump. I mean, we are left with some controversial kind of, I would say, impression of that meeting. The meeting lasted, no offense to our leaders, less than 1 hour. This is the attitude which is like, I would say, United States is giving to 5 independent countries. And of course, it was also kind of practical. It was all about investment and
leading role in economic development.
That those discussions will stay in the framework of their bilateral obligations with Beijing and Moscow, and also within the framework of SCO and Shanghai spirit.
The region as a whole, the Central Asia in particular, has become more and more contested, not only because I think the United States, the policy, their interest, has been become very much, I think, focused on one single issue, which is the critical mineral and inclusive.
The other thing is about trade. Of course, we have seen tariffs, one country against the rest of the world. Now it quiets down somewhat with the bilateral negotiations, including between China and the United States, the two heads of that. Of course, there are some results when it comes to impacts in economic and trade. But
further, would they more bilateral agreements between the members of the states? It's remained to be seen. We also have WTO in a way. And at the same time, we've got a very high protectionist policy, textbook example by President Trump.
Among the SCO economies are always quite active. Recently, we have seen, of course,
situation. And this is why I think to bring other initiatives, which really challenges this kind of approach and provides an alternative path to development. And in this regard, the Global Governance Initiative.
You're watching The World Today on CGTN. Coming to you, Russia is willing to further intensify dialogue and exchanges with China at all levels, and that Russia is also willing to create a favorable business environment for Chinese enterprises investing in Russia. Chinese Premier Li Qiang is in Moscow to attend the 24th meeting of the Council of Heads of Government of member states of the SCO. China is urging Japan to stop overstepping the line, retract its erroneous words and deeds, and honor its commitment
of bilateral relations. The clear stipulations on the Taiwan question made in the 4 political documents between China and Japan
stress that in terms of Takaichi's remarks, China has and will continue to lodge strong protests with Japan, to immediately reflect on and correct its wrongdoing, retract the wrongful remarks, and stop making provocations on China-related issues. As she also expressed China's concern over the rising safety risks for Chinese citizens in Japan and justified the ministry's alert. Japanese Prime Minister
impacts across neighbouring countries and regions. If Japan's domestic policy shifts in this direction, its foreign policy may follow, reviving offensive military capabilities and raising serious concerns about regional stability, maritime security and global trade.
It is that one incendiary element within that relationship which can literally burn the relationship between the two countries down and cause tremendous damage. Just
speaking in that manner, because this, in my opinion, this is the severe interference into the internal affairs of one country, because here we are supporting, and not that our country is supporting policy one China, but also this is what
$1 billion. China's defense ministry has slammed U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, vowing to take all necessary measures to safeguard national. The U.S.-backed resolution authorizes the creation of an international stabilization force, as well as a transitional government in Gaza. Hamas has rejected the plan, saying that it violates Palestinians' rights and would make Gaza an international protectorate. And China and Russia abstained from the vote. Mitch McCann has more details.
Gives the next phase of its 20-point peace plan in Gaza both legitimacy from the international community and a UN-backed legal mandate moving forward. Now, that is critical because that legal mandate from the UN is something that America's allies reportedly wanted before signing on to that international stabilization turn to war. After the vote, he thanked the Council and discussed more about the so-called Board of Peace. We heard from China's ambassador to United Nations, Fu. Here's what he had to say here at the UN.
The draft resolution is vague and unclear on many critical elements. The penholder requests the Council to authorize the establishment of a Board of Peace.
Writes this resolution, adding that assigning...
Thank you for watching Sports with Mike Fox. Stay tuned.